across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, and at midnight, as usual, it is your chance to talk back. I was just saying to Peter, I said, I think it's probably only a woman could be asking this question, because if a man did it, they may be accused of being misogynist. But is it right? Should government be 50-50 men and women? Should it be? Because that's what the WPLP, the Women's Parliamentary Labour Party, have asked Andy Burnham to consider. Now, it is an issue with Labour. They do have a woman problem. I think that's really obvious. And I think that Keir Starmer definitely had a woman problem. I mean, lots of decisions were made. There weren't any women in the room. But how much does that matter? I mean, part of me thinks there should always be a woman in the room, just in case there's a different point of view, or particularly if it's about women's issues. But on the whole, I don't really mind, as long as the people who are doing the job are competent at doing the job. I certainly don't agree with putting somebody in that job for diversity purposes only. If you've got two candidates, both of whom are brilliant, then yeah, why not go for the diverse one? That might bring a different take on the story. It might bring a different point of view. It might have there may be some difference into it. But also to call Andy Burnham the first female Labour Prime Minister because he is going to be tackling women's issues is a really strange thing to say. Because what are women's issues? I mean, I would have thought they would be the same as men's issues, wouldn't they? A fair health service, a decent safety record. And those are the things that were mentioned. Oh, it's women's issues. They're going to go, he's going to be looking after the, budgets and being like a woman. That offended me, because it's like, well, what do you mean by a woman's issue? I mean, what are you going to have a makeup department? I don't know. What are you talking about? That is sexist. I mean, Andy Burnham, of course, is not a woman, never has been a woman, and never will be a woman. But how much do you think we need to be diverse in a cabinet? Right? Because they're saying now that, of course, Andy Burnham, first of all, they were going, well, next time, Keir Starmer was saying, next time it should be a woman, right? Next time it should be a woman leader. They've never had a female leader. But you could argue that some of the Tory women leaders, Liz Truss, were absolutely catastrophic. But I don't think she was given the job because she was a woman. I don't believe that was even in the mix there. But I don't know. I'm sort of torn on this, because I do think that women do bring something different. I think that they do bring a different point of view. They can certainly see some things more clearly. I don't think Peter Mandelson would have been appointed if a woman had been asked, or if a woman was in the room to say, look, this Jeffrey Epstein stuff is actually really very, don't touch him with a barge pole. I genuinely believe that. So how much should we have this split of men and women in a cabinet? Does it matter? As long as whoever's got the job is good at the job? Or do you think that women do bring something unique and something interesting to the conversation? So give me a call. I'd love to talk to you about this. 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Right, the rest of the programme, coming into the studio to go through the newspapers. We have my big brother, Andrew Hosken. He's going to be here to go through the papers for us. Ed Wiseman will also be joining us, who normally does the papers, but he's actually here in his official capacity as transport and travel journalist, looking into those flying taxis. Just how likely are we to get those? We're going to be talking to Graham Whettone as well about the Novak case and the inquiry now into those police officers and what we can expect to happen next, and what needs to come out of this inquiry. I think that's a really interesting question. What needs to come out of this inquiry? So all of that is to come across the next 3 hours. Plus, we're going to be heading to the US to talk about that loss in the Senate in Congress, for Donald Trump on birthright citizenship. And we're going to be talking to Alex Three Lions Irons about that game, that England game, earlier on today, which meant that I couldn't get a car for love nor money. I nearly had to walk in. But anyway, all of that is to come, a very busy show. But let's kick off with this. Andy Burnham prepares for Labour leadership, addressing internal gender dynamics. And this has now become a top priority. Female Labour MPs have criticised a persistent boys' club culture within the party and called for the next PM to commit to a 50-50 gender split. Speaking to the Women's Parliamentary Labour Party, Burnham promised to stamp out the behaviour that they've been complaining about, pledging that anyone caught undermining female colleagues would be immediately sacked. In fact, he said their feet wouldn't touch the ground. Burnham also distanced himself from the bizarre phrase published in The Spectator, where a senior Labour figure claimed that Burnham would be Labour's first woman Prime Minister due to focusing on female agendas like health, education and family finances. If that isn't misogynistic, I really don't know what is. But does Labour have a women problem? Well, joining me to discuss this now is the fabulous John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. First of all, John, commiserations for being out of the World Cup.
I wasn't in it. No, but
No,
listen, I was just saying earlier, I think this is actually quite important. For 75 minutes earlier on this evening, watching that England game, I couldn't help thinking that England fans know, even just for 75 minutes until they scored, what it's like to be a Scottish football fan. That's what it's like for us in every game.
Because the stands were silent, weren't they? I mean, people they were just like in shock and horror. But this World Cup has really thrown up some corkers, hasn't it?
Look, it's amazing. Look, I mean, there's hardly a bad team in this World Cup, it has to be said.
Yeah.
All of these teams that many of these teams we thought would be minnows or something, haven't quite turned out to be minnows. There's 9 African teams, for example, in the last 32. We're in the middle of that last 32. I mean, a lot of it's been turned upside down. Look, the big teams are still there. France look like the favourites. They're going to be hard to beat. Spain and Argentina, and England must be up there as well.
Well, they're playing Mexico next, in Mexico, so probably
high
bye-bye.
altitude,
probably
intimidating stadium.
Yeah, lots of home supporters. I think Mexico is going to be a tough one for them. Anyway, let's turn our attention to politics now, and Labour and women. I mean, if you look at the Labour Party historically, it hasn't covered itself in glory when it comes to a gender balance, has it? There was only one time, and that was Blair's Babes, wasn't it?
Well, I think of you until actually the very last decade and the end of the last decade of the 20th century, politics has had a women problem if you're going to look at it in terms of parliamentary representation. You're right to mention the so-called Blair Babes, though we all feel a wee bit uncomfortable
saying
calling
that now.
those women that now. There was 101 of them in the House of Commons. Now, before that, Labour, in fact, the election before that, I think they only had 37. And, you know, that was a huge increase. Now, you're now looking, having had a record number of Labour MPs that were women in 1997 and 2017. You've now got, I think it's something like 186 women Labour MPs. That's 46% of the PLP. That's a vast improvement on what's gone before. However, you're entirely right to point out that there's never been a woman leader of the Labour Party. And, you know, you can go back and think of historically some pretty amazing and significant women. Jenny Lee was, you know, an MP in Fife. She was the person who championed the Open University back in the 1960s. I mean, I once saw in 1993, I was recalling it earlier on, Barbara Castle.
Yes.
Speaking, tiny woman, speaking. I mean, she was really, really quiet, but speaking with such authority as an 83-year-old at a public meeting I went to about how she got involved in politics in Blackburn, all about trying to get a swimming pool and showers for men who worked down the pits, and how she was instrumental in the Equal Pay Act. She was the Health Secretary, the Employment Secretary in her time. An incredible woman. She, in fact, in 1968 under Harold Wilson, and again I had forgotten this, was appointed First Secretary of State, which was
yes.
in reality
that's a job
the Deputy Prime Minister.
That's empty now, isn't it, that job? Keir Starmer didn't fill it.
Well, look, you know, you've had, you know, Harriet Harman was the deputy leader of the Labour Party, but not the deputy prime minister under Gordon Brown.
Yeah.
Angela Rayner was the deputy prime minister, but that kind of ended in tears quite recently. But never a leader. And again, sorry, the other person, I mean, certainly I think of significance that I can remember in the Labour Party back. Played a significant role back in the early 2000s, late 1990s, 2000s, was Mo Mowlam.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And the role that she played
in Northern Ireland as well.
People in Northern Ireland.
Yeah,
yes.
Extraordinary. And there have been extraordinary women. But there is no doubt that certainly under Keir Starmer, there were a lot of complaints about the boys' club. He surrounded himself, it seemed, with a small cohort of all men. And that decisions were made behind closed doors, and there were no women in the room. Do you think that matters, that there's at least one woman in the room? Do you think that women, because women and men are not the same, I hate to break it to you, but we do think in a different way. There are differences in us, and that maybe those differences could be helpful.
Oh, I think women bring something completely different to the table. I think they bring a different perspective. They bring, well, even in terms of mood, and in terms of trying to encourage consensus and to move things forward, I think they bring immensely different qualities to political parties. Of course, like, you know, you could argue, and some people do argue, that it depends on the women in the same way that it depends on the man. You know, that not everybody thought Margaret Thatcher was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Liz Truss was clearly, for her own party, a disaster. But I think, look, it's a hugely important development that there are more women in Parliament, and it is a hugely important development that you would, if the Labour Party went down the road of having a 50-50 split in the cabinet, that actually would bring something different. It's worth saying, Petrie, in Scotland, for example, for the last period in the Scottish Parliament, the Scottish Government had more than 50% of women in the cabinet. It currently has, I think, 50% under John Swinney, because they explicitly, after Alex Salmond, went down the road of making sure that happened. And yeah, I think it does bring something different. But look, you know, some of these individuals, right, are not always everybody's cup of tea.
No, I mean, you talk about women getting things done. It is arguably true that Bridget Phillipson has managed to push through quite a lot of things, and she's been really adept at getting the civil service behind her. She's been very, very. In fact, they're now trying to recruit her to help out with welfare and trying to get people on side to make some changes to the welfare bill. But they're saying, well, she wouldn't have been a good leader, although she is leading. Or people won't like her, and they seem to throw a lot of excuses and hurdles in front of women that they don't throw in front of men who are less achieved. They've achieved less.
Well, I think, I sometimes make an argument that there's two kind of politicians, no matter what parties they're in. There's those politicians that want to be there, and those politicians that want to be there to do something.
Yeah.
And I think by and large, I think, and this is a generalisation, I think women would be more likely to fall into the second category rather than the first.
When you look at the other bizarre statement that I mentioned in the talk-up there that was briefed to The Spectator, saying that Andy Burnham would be Labour's first woman Prime Minister due to his focus on female agendas like health, education and family finances. I'd love to know who briefed that, because whoever it is a total misogynist.
It was probably a man, yeah.
Yeah, it would definitely have been a man.
Look, I think it's one of these kind of shallow statements that people make, and it sounded like an interesting bit of spin at the time. I do think it is interesting, nevertheless, that Andy Burnham did go to the women's PLP. I was told by somebody earlier who was there that he went down very well with that group of people, but he now faces that position, that demand, I suppose, that the cabinet does have that kind of mix. Now that, it seems to me, is going to be interesting because, for the last 2 weeks already, we've heard a whole load of speculation, not speculation that I think will be welcomed by many of the women who would have been at that meeting if this is the agenda they want to have. It appears that, for example, the most senior woman in the cabinet at the moment, Rachel Reeves, won't have a job.
Yeah.
There's talk about Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, that job being taken by a man. And we can come to this in a minute about who that man might be. There's also been speculation that Shabana Mahmood, who is in one of the other of the four leading jobs in the cabinet as Home Secretary, might be moved. So, it's not really, despite, as I say, these demands, it's not really a good place if you look at any of the speculation. Yeah,
it is really interesting to see that. But again, I don't believe that a woman should be there just because she's a woman. I think that it needs to be a meritocracy as well. But that is interesting, isn't it? Because the other quote that's knocking around is, we can't have more Miliband's in the cabinet than women, because David Miliband may be coming back into British politics. He'd have to get a position in the Lords, I believe, in order to do that, as Foreign Secretary. It's a good call.
Well, look, it would be absolutely astonishing, although both brothers, David and Ed, have been in the cabinet together, again under Gordon Brown in different jobs. But it would be absolutely astonishing, I think anyway, if Ed Miliband was to end up as the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and David Miliband were to end up in the Lords as the Foreign Secretary, two of the big four jobs in the cabinet. I think that would be pretty amazing if that happened, because again, if Andy Burnham's to go down the road of having a 50-50 split, he's already, it looks to me, promised a series of jobs to people from Manchester. Louise Hay, for example. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, Lucy Powell, gets. So he's got that circle of people. But the other group of people that he's got, and it seems to me this is a bunch of people who have certainly been around him. Andy Burnham, if you go way back to the 1990s, was a special advisor even before the election in '97 when Blair was elected. And it seems to me that looking at all the speculation about who's going to get the top jobs, that he's gathering round, in effect, what were a whole load of special advisors from that time. Pat McFadden was a special advisor. Yvette Cooper was a special advisor. James Purnell, who looks as if he's going to be his chief of staff, was a special advisor. So were the two Miliband's, and these are all the names. So it's those two groups of people who are going to form the core of what his cabinet looks like.
There's part of me that does really want to see Ed and David together at some point, because when Ed Miliband, and everybody said they chose the wrong brother anyway, but they stopped having Christmases together, didn't they? Apparently over that fallout and the perceived treachery of Ed Miliband over his brother.
Well, some of the speculation appears to suggest that they still don't like each other very much. So I think
so it's great for us.
That would be something worth watching.
Yeah, that would be great for us. Not so great for the country, but great for us to watch that. It is interesting, isn't it, when you see that these it's not just a case of putting men in those positions, but it's also people like Yvette Cooper who've had an enormous history in politics, and I think she's been a very strong politician. I mean, she'd sort of disappeared in recent years, I think, but she's sort of become a shadow. But and just not including them at all it would be interesting. So if they not just replacing them, but also just getting rid of them.
Well, that again is going to be one of the fascinating things about the next couple of weeks, about who actually falls out. Look, there's going to be, we've already seen over the past fortnight since Burnham won in Makerfield a whole lot of speculation about who's getting what jobs. And what we got, it's the 19th of July or whatever, it's only the 1st of July. There's another 18 days of speculation to go. So goodness knows where we'll end up by the time we get there.
Boris Johnson as Chancellor.
That's what makes all of this, to be fair, as you rightly point out, absolutely fascinating. Look, there's other people around. Is there going to be a place for John Healey? Is he coming back?
Yeah, good point.
Last week all of the papers were full of speculation about what was happening to Wes Streeton, and we haven't heard anything for about a week about any of that. And the other person who, and I do find this fascinating, the other person who I hear very, very little about, and there's little about in the press, is Angela Rayner.
I know. That's gone very quiet, hasn't it? Since she was a buddy of Andy Burnham, a big buddy. Maybe she'll be back to Deputy PM.
Well, again, presumably there's still that issue hanging over her about the tax in relation to the other home that she bought.
Well, reputationally at least, yeah.
But so, again, it will be interesting to see where her name features in the next couple of weeks. There's another big problem, though, attached to some of this. It's great stuff for us to be able to play that kind of fantasy politics and all this speculation. Labour are now in a very difficult position. We're now to what we're 6 months or so away from the halfway point in a full term of the Labour government. I think there will be, and certainly has been so far, a bit of a Burnham bounce. I don't think Burnham will make the same mistakes going forward as Starmer made. But they're in a very, very difficult position. We're already seeing stories even before he started about a black hole in the defence budget and possible tax increases or more borrowing. Government is hard, and it will be, hard for Burnham to actually find his feet after a short period of time, because it's all been very quick until he goes into government. And this is, what we're going to be facing over the next period of time.
At least it's never boring, John. At least it's never boring. John Boothman, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. John Boothman there, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. A quick break, back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you. And just a reminder that Andy Hosken will be coming in at the top of the hour to go through the papers with me for you. Also, we're going to be talking about flying taxis, which I can't wait to have a chat. I needed one of those today, I tell you. But coming up at midnight, of course, it is your chance to talk back. And as I was just saying there to John Boothman, we were talking there about the history, really, of the women in the Labour Party. And that's because there was... Andy Burnham met with the WPLP, the Women's Parliamentary Labour Party, earlier today, and has promised to change behaviours within the Labour Party, which is allegedly and reportedly hugely misogynistic. And in fact, they've asked for a 50-50 split in the cabinet in terms of gender. So do you support that? Do you think that that is the right thing to do? I mean, I do think that women bring something different to the table. I think we have different points of view. I think we're able to articulate those different points of view. But I think generally we all want the same thing, right? We all want a system that works instead of the one we've got at the moment. And maybe a woman could bring something a little bit different to that discussion. But does it need to be a forced 50-50 split in gender? And maybe you think it should be. I mean, there should certainly always be always be a female in the room when things are being decided. If not just to ask questions. I think it's important that if women are part of government, that they should at least be listened to. But I'm not so convinced by the 50-50 split. I have to be honest with you. I'd rather just have somebody who can do the job well. If that happens to be a woman, that's brilliant. If it happens to be a man, then great. That's fine. But I do think women do bring something different. So give me a call on that. 0344 499 1000 and text the word talk and your message to 87222. Now, though, the 2026 World Cup is well and truly underway and England's still in. Amazing. Right here on Talk, we're celebrating a massive summer of football in absolute style. How do you fancy getting your hands on a whopping £26,000 in tax-free cash? Just imagine that landing straight into your bank account, whether you clear the bills, book a luxury holiday, or just enjoy a bit of financial breathing room. So if your bank balance could do with a serious boost this summer, here's everything you need to know.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 83338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1 PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good evening. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you. And the Independent Office for Police Conduct has launched a gross misconduct investigation into 2 Hampshire police officers involved in the Henry Novak murder case. Well, the teenage student, as we know, was killed in Southampton by Vikram Digwar, who falsely claimed he was the victim. In fact, he said he was a victim of a racist attack. Officers believed the killer at the time, handcuffing a dying Novak while ignoring his pleas that he could not breathe. In fact, it took them 8 minutes to find that he had indeed been stabbed, even though he told them many times. Well, watchdog investigators are now examining whether bias, race or religion influenced the shocking lack of first aid. And what was going on around that arrest? What happened in the calls beforehand? What were they told when they were heading to the scene? All of these things will paint a picture of why these officers behaved in the way that they did. There's also a further investigation into bringing the police into disrepute, I think is a word similar to that anyway, for saying, when Henry Novak said, "I've been stabbed," saying, "I don't think you have, mate," which was just chilling, wasn't it? Well, here to discuss this with me is Graham Whettone, who is a former Met police officer and author of How to Be a Police Officer. Graham, it's good to talk to you again. I mean, last time we spoke, we did touch on the possibility of there being some form of investigation. Well, now we know that this is going forward. What are the processes that led them to this decision? Is it public pressure? Will it be pressure from the parents? Or will it literally be an honest want to look into themselves?
That's a great question. And evening, Petrie, good to talk to you again. That's a great question, because I think in you read the IPC statement that they released today, there's a paragraph in there that said they have to take account of the impact on public confidence this incident has had. And I think if you look at that in the round, take that as it says, I think there's clearly been an impact on public confidence, but some of that impact has come from comments in social media, within the mainstream media itself, which is, in my view, mainly based on hindsight. There was very little comment at all before the trial itself. Virtually no comment before we saw that chilling body-worn video, or heard those comments about, "I've been stabbed, I don't think you have, mate." So there was virtually no commentary at all about it within the public. The impact on public confidence has come since the trial and since the release of some of the information. So I think the IPC statement almost alludes to the fact that they are looking at it in the round as such. They have to wait until the end of the criminal trial, which they have. They will then look at the officers' statements and what's been said about the case and the impact that has had on public confidence. And I think it's quite telling that officers can now almost be investigated and then potentially judged based on, dare I say it, a lot of misinformation has been put out in the public domain since the trial itself.
Are you therefore saying that if there hadn't been the public pushback, if those clips hadn't been released, if we hadn't got so personally involved in this, that they may not have been investigated?
No, I'm not. And again, no one's going to come on and either defend the actions.
No, absolutely not. No.
Every officer knows as soon as you use force, it's up to you to justify that use of force. Clarity and context and explanation can come from others. And I think there would have still been, in fact, I know there would have still been an investigation, because sadly Henry died. There was a murder case, and there was clearly some issues around how he was treated, the dignity. There's part in police regulations and ethics and values about treating people with dignity at all times. And clearly that's an aspect in this case as well. So there would always have been an investigation. I think it's just telling that part of the statement from the IPC clearly references the impact on public confidence. And in my view, there's been a clear impact on public confidence because of, and not all of it, some of it's been factual, but there has been an awful lot of misinformation, wrong assessment, hindsight views on this. There's been allegations that actually the police let him die. And it was clear from the trial, a forensic pathologist gave evidence under oath that the injury was not survivable. The trial judge himself makes references, and I've got it in front of me.
Yeah.
It's paragraph 27 of the trial judge's summing up, that the injury was likely not have been detectable at the time because it was dark, he had dark clothing on, and the actual fatal injury would not have been clear. And having dealt with people that have been stabbed, people think it's like on the telly where there's like pools of blood and there's blood, and I hate to be so graphic, almost like blood pouring out of injuries. Most of the times it isn't. The blood gets soaked into the clothing, and it can take some time when you're doing an assessment, an investigation of any potential injuries. If you go straight into doing CPR, which is my understanding they virtually went into here, your primary focus then is on getting that person breathing and keeping them alive. Any other injuries, dare I say it, like injuries where there's blood involved, could almost wait to be bandaged up later, because your priority then is trying to get that individual breathing again. So I can understand to some extent, but I do have some questions about the decision making. I can understand to some extent almost the process they went through, but I think, as the IPC have alluded to, the issue around race, religion was their focus on a racially aggravated assault. So they went down a certain pathway because that's what they were told they had to do with that type of allegation. I think that's pertinent to the investigation as well.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, actually, and that's why it's good to see that the inquiry does include as well the phone calls that the dispatch officers, all of those people who were involved in them arriving, because although nobody supports, obviously, what happened, and it is clear that something went horribly wrong here, there is always context, isn't there? And this inquiry looks to pull all of that context into focus, but still people will be sitting there going, no, he said I'd been stabbed, and they didn't check it for 8 minutes. Now, as you said, that would be unlikely that had they checked it and found it, that he would have survived those injuries anyway, but he certainly would have died with more dignity.
Yeah, I'd accept that. I would. But again, these aren't my words. These are literally from the judge's summing up, the forensic pathologist's assessment of the injuries. The trial judge says that they were literally given a whole host of lies, which took them down a certain course of action. All police officers understand something called the national decision model, which is where you assess each decision you make at each phase. So your powers and policies, which may lead them down the racial aggravated assault policy, how we deal with people then. The fact he was on the ground, they had to move him somewhere where they could then do CPR. The trial judge references the fact he was then arrested, and that's a legal requirement. If they decide they've got reasonable grounds to suspect an offence has been committed, they are legally bound to arrest that person. And it sounds drastic. You're not being charged or being told you're being investigated for an offence. They're then legally bound to arrest that person as soon as they can, unless it's impractical to do so. I would suggest in those sort of circumstances, it was practical to make the arrest, hence why he was arrested. And then you are told that anything you say from that point can be used against you. That's a legal requirement.
But what was interesting, though, is looking at Henry Novak was cuffed and Vikram Digwal was not cuffed on arrest.
Absolutely.
So there is a difference there. They had clearly, it seems to me, like made up their minds who was the victim and who was the perpetrator, and didn't challenge that first decision enough.
No, I agree. And I was going to come on to that. The fact they then handcuffed him straight away, the fact you arrest somebody doesn't mean you automatically, or it wouldn't ordinarily automatically go straight to handcuffing. It may well be they had their minds made up already, haven't then taken literally pause to assess information, what they're being told by different parties. Even though they've arrested, do you need to handcuff at that particular point? Which is what I'm saying. You can't defend what they've done. They have to justify their actions, their use of force at each stage. The trial judge referenced he was handcuffed for about a minute before they finally realised he was in urgent need of medical care, then started the CPR straight away. But they were obviously given a whole host of lies. You've mentioned those calls. It will a lot of it will hinge on the actual information they were given. Who ended up being the suspect, what they thought was the victim when they first turned up. That's corroborated by other witnesses at the scene, who have then corroborated what they first been told, which almost led them down the wrong path initially. It takes knowledge and experience to almost pause in those incidents, those really critical situations, and just reassess what you're being told, and then what you can see and what you're being told by all parties, not just what you think are the victims at the time, but take time with a suspect But clearly, the first aid requirements, the medical aid requirements, overtook maybe that decision-making process. But that's part of what the IPC need to look at, exactly what happened in sequence, what the decision-making of each officer, because I understand it's 2 officers under investigation for gross misconduct, so the decision-making of each officer at each phase, and what other options they considered at each time.
There's a caveat to this, isn't there, that says that even though they're being investigated, doesn't mean that it will follow that there will be any disciplinary action. And this presumably, if this inquiry goes when it does go ahead, that negates the need for any criminal investigation.
IPC can still recommend criminal charges from investigation, so that's within their remit. They're looking at them, my understanding anyway, they're looking at them for gross misconduct, but they could also still actually, if they identify what are perceived to be or believed to be criminal offences, it would then come back to the prosecution service. But at the moment, it's under gross misconduct, which is discipline type offences. What they've put in their statement today is discipline type offences they're looking into.
What sort of discipline could they face, though, for gross misconduct? I mean, is that a firing offence?
Is a mandatory dismissal.
Oh, right.
If it's proven for gross misconduct, is my understanding anyway for the discipline code, it's mandatory dismissal for it. So that it's, I mean, again, I'm fully of the opinion and the mindset that those officers never went out that night intending to let someone die.
I would. I mean, that would be terrifying if any of us thought that. But nonetheless, we do demand a different standard from a police officer than a bystander who said, "Well, that's what I would have done," or "I believed him." You know, we do expect them to challenge what they're being told, or at least to examine it and question it. In your view, Graham, what needs to come out of this inquiry? Because I'm not sure what will satisfy the public, but what should come out of this, do you think?
That's another good question. I think the policing needs to review, one, its communication stance. This has been all over social media, and as I mentioned, you've only got to look on social media. There's been a huge amount of misinformation. I keep mentioning the trial judges summing up. If you read the trial judges summing up, that negates most of what I've read on social media. The majority of what I've read on social media from people saying, you know, this happened and that happened. You read the actual summing up and some of the evidence that was given under oath at court, it negates most of it, but people believe what they read on the internet. I think the policing needs to look at its communication stance and strategy. They cannot release too much before a criminal trial in case it prejudices it, and nobody would want that. But I think you need to look at what the information you give out at certain times, body-worn video being released, different statements, the wording, etc., what was said, the context things were said in, because I think policing needs to look at the type of information that's coming out and how they can actually answer it, not just almost like respond to it, but give it some context and clarity. I'd hope that comes out of this. Maybe a review of policies and actions, etc., you know, mandatory arrest policies or mandatory courses of action when certain offences, i.e. racial aggravated assaults, are then alleged. How we treat people when we turn up, keeping that, as I keep mentioning it, the national decision model, that process of assessing every decision you make, reviewing the information, reviewing your powers and policies, and then what action you're going to take once you review each stage. I think that needs to come back into policing again, because sometimes, and newer officers are taught this, they're almost given instructions on making sure they deal with something almost in sequence. It becomes they take your personality out of some decision making. I think that needs to come back into policing. Literally, use your common sense, use your own judgment. If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. But because you're told you've got to take a certain course of action, you're following almost steps 1 to 10, and you follow that almost religiously. I think personalities, common sense, decision making needs to come back into policing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Graham, thank you. Lovely to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Graham Whitone there, who is a former Met police officer and author of How to Be a Police Officer. A quick break, and then we're going to catch a flying taxi.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you. And I could have done with one of these today, although I don't think they'd pick up in Shepherd's Bush and drop me off in London Bridge. But we could see flying electric taxis start working in the UK within 2 years. These special aircraft take off like helicopters but fly like airplanes, and they aim to beat traffic jams on the ground. The government is helping to fund this project to make city travel cleaner and quieter. However, there are still challenges ahead. To become truly successful, companies need to make the tickets affordable for regular people and prove that these flying taxis are completely safe in the sky. Some reports are suggesting it'll cost the same as a cab. Mind you, they're quite expensive, but brilliant. Ed Wiseman joins me now, a transport and travel journalist in his official capacity. Ed Wiseman, good to see you.
Hi, Petrie.
This sounds a little bit far-fetched to me, that in 2 years we could see these aircraft.
Yes, I have been reporting on this for almost 2 decades now. And every time it is a year or two away. There are lots of reasons why this won't happen, and most of them are quite obvious, as you're probably aware from having looked outside. There aren't actually that many places to land, whatever that machine is in London Bridge, which is where you want to get to. It looks an awful lot like a plane, which requires an airport, or at least a pretty big field to land in and take off from. So unless your business is mostly in fields or outside of town, it's not going to be much point. But apart from that, this is technology that is slightly worse than what we already have. We already have helicopters. They kind of exist. Vertical takeoff and landing is not something that is fundamentally new. It's just hard to get right. So we tend to leave it to the professionals, who even then sometimes get it spectacularly wrong, killing lots of people and causing lots of damage. So no, I don't think this is going to happen. Don't hold your breath. Don't cancel your Uber subscription just yet. Cars are still kind of going to be de rigueur probably for the rest of our lives. And if you really do need vertical takeoff and landing, you probably already know somebody with a helicopter anywhere, and you can just do it the safe and traditional way.
But I mean, even with helicopters in this, there's only a couple of places you can land a helicopter. I think it was the Harrods.
I think Harrods.
Battersea.
Harrods, I don't think ever used their helicopter.
I don't think they did. It was a big...
Because it's too complicated. The De Beers building, I think, still has one, but I don't know if they still do that. Otherwise, yeah, you're left out in Battersea, which is rarely where you want to be. And there's one out on the Isle of Dogs somewhere, which is, I suppose, kind of helpful. But this is kind of the problem. For the most part, it's very unlikely that a flying car, so to speak, one of these machines is going to get you to and from where you need to be. It's highly probable that you're better off landing at an ordinary airport in an aircraft that has been flown by somebody who is trained to do it, and then getting the Piccadilly line, get the Gatwick Express. It's fine. Get a Pret sandwich and just relax. It's going to be a much better experience.
Yeah, I mean, if the pilots are anything like the Uber drivers, we are in trouble.
Well, that's the thing. You're going to end up jumping into the back of one of these flying cars, and this guy's going to be smelling of air freshener and on the phone to somebody else, muttering into his iPhone. And then what then? Are you going to think, brilliant, this is the future? Or are you going to think,
I'm going to die?
Yeah, exactly. Or just whatever you normally think getting into an Uber, which can be a pretty hair-raising experience, as I'm sure you're aware. No, I think this is a lovely idea. And from a technological perspective, vertical takeoff and landing is a really fabulous thing. You must have seen Harrier jump jets in your time, and that's a really spectacular
incredible
machine.
Yeah,
absolutely. What a balletic performance.
And I've flown in lots of different helicopters as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And they are amazing. But the thing is with these, right, I mean, I had a bit of a dig around about it, and they're saying that you know, as long as there's 6 people in the aircraft, it will be the same cost as I guess each as if you've got a black cab. And maybe if it's airport to airport, that could work. But we're also going to be cluttering the skies with these things, drones that Amazon wants to use. I mean, it's like one of those futuristic movies where you've got all the traffic in the sky.
If it worked, it would be wonderful. But look, I mean, we're coming from London, where if you hear a helicopter, it's kind of unusual. There are
It's the police.
In the world. It's the police, or something terrible has happened somewhere. Yeah. It's either the police or the air ambulance. There is a shuttle that goes from Biggin Hill. I've taken it once, from Biggin Hill down to Battersea, and it takes 6 minutes. It's designed for people who've landed at Biggin Hill and need to get into the centre of town. And that's an arguable use case, but the helicopter they already use, I think, is fine. I do understand the principle for cities like Sao Paulo, which I think has a fleet of several hundred helicopters because the traffic is simply that bad, and they are very accustomed to landing helicopters on the roofs of buildings in a way that we aren't here. And in those kinds of environments, I suppose New York and other cities where air travel is a bit more normalized, there's a very marginal argument that maybe this would, so to speak, take off. But I've yet to find any strong arguments for this kind of technology over just getting a normal helicopter made by a proper company that has a website and a phone number, rather than these random startups that turn up every 6 months purporting to be revolutionizing air travel. So no, I'm afraid I'm a hater. I think I've had to write about these machines so often to be impressed with the engineers working on them, but deeply uninspired and unconvinced by their real-world use case.
What about the technology, though? The idea that they would be electric.
Yeah, that's new.
That's new?
That's fresh.
Will we see helicopters go electric, do you think, or is it too unstable?
I think that will happen. There are lots of problems. There are lots of problems with it. Liquid fuel is still better for aviation across the board. We're starting to encounter some. I mean, drones. Obviously, the kind of drone that you can buy from Argos it's an electric quadcopter. Making that bigger has proven very challenging, and making that bigger and anything approaching safe is proving even more so. But batteries are getting lighter and more powerful, and motors are getting lighter. You know, a lot of this is about sort of saving weight, and I think that's one of the big engineering frontiers that are being overcome by these companies. But nobody's really come up with something that flies for long enough, is safe enough, is cheap enough to undercut a conventional helicopter yet, and that's probably not going to happen for 20 years rather than 2. It's also worth pointing out that in this industry, people are understandably quite risk averse, and you can't just, it takes so much longer to build an aircraft than a car even, and cars take a long time to put together. People are working on a new car for half a decade before it hits the roads. But airframes, you can't just build one from scratch and decide it's going to go into production. It takes a long time. It takes years and years and years. So
why do they keep saying then that it's going to be 2 years away? Is that just to get more investment? I mean, what is the purpose?
I think so.
Right.
I think so. I think it's a mixture. It's a mixture of cynical and very money orientated desperation for VC cash, which is remarkably forthcoming. There's a real commercial advantage to whoever nails this space as well. So there is a bit of money flowing in from the established aeronautics companies. Some of the big names in aviation are actually putting some money into these incubated startups. And I think some of the guys are just nutters. There have always been blokes in sheds building weird contraptions with varying degrees of outcome. And yeah, a lot of these guys have put together something quite cool. There was a guy in the Czech Republic who did kind of build a flying car. It was vastly worse than any plane or car as standalone objects, but it did kind of work, and good for him. It's never going to reach. I mean, it was probably not particularly safe, and it probably wasn't particularly practical, but yeah, it worked. And there are loads of people out there doing things like that, and just pushing the boundaries of physics.
Well, one day, maybe.
One day, absolutely one day. But I think for the time being, I think we're going to have to stick to 4 pneumatic tyres and a dodgy air freshener.
And traffic jams. Great. Ed Wiseman, thank you. Brilliant to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Ed Wiseman there, transport and travel journalist. He is not a fan. He cannot see this happening. And I absolutely can see his point, because it doesn't look like it's going to really... How can it be possible? I just don't know. Anyway, right, coming up at the top of the hour, it is Andrew Hosken. He's going to be here to go through the newspapers for you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Petrie and this is Talk. And don't forget, coming up at midnight, it is your chance to talk back. We also got a couple of other things in there because of the football. But I do want to ask you this question. Do you think that any cabinet of government should be a 50-50 split of men and women? Because that's what the Women's Parliamentary Labour Party is asking our soon-to-be Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, to do, to certainly consider. They said they're fed up with the total misogyny that has been hanging around the Labour government or the Labour Party, that they're not in the room, that Keir Starmer had a boys' club. I was hearing that from everybody, you know, a while ago, which never stopped. The fact that he surrounded himself with boys, closed the doors, there was never any women involved in any big decision-making, and that there was a woman problem, that Labour has a woman problem. Now, they've never had a female leader. It's always, oh, the next one. The next time we'll do that. Next time we'll do that. Well, Andy Burnham, although accused of being a woman, is not indeed a woman. And I found the only thing I found offensive about that whole idea was the idea that it's women's issues like health and education and budgets. It's like, well, that's everybody's issue, isn't it? You pillock, whoever it was. We don't know who it was, but I would say clearly a man. Does Labour have a women problem? Or do you think, look, it just shouldn't be any diversity hires. There should always be the best person for the job. And there is, in some cases, Labour has had some phenomenal women. And they certainly could have done the job. But why is it, do you think, the Tories... I mean, look, let's forget Liz Truss when we're talking about women in the Tories. you know, they've had 4 leaders, and you know, not all brilliant. Some tragedy of timing that they became Prime Minister meant that they didn't get a full crack at the whip, I believe. But also, you know, I don't believe they were hired because they were women. It was because people thought they were the right person for the job at the time, or they had no other choice. So I think that women bring something different. I think that women think differently. I do. I don't think we're the same at all. And even though I am a feminist, I don't believe that men and women are the same. But I think we bring something unique, and I think we bring something to the table. Whether that means it should be a 50-50 split, I'm undecided on, because I think that is forcing an issue that should... I'm a fan of a meritocracy, for example. I would hate to be hired because I was a female broadcaster and that be the only reason, right? I would hate that. I would reject that. So it may be helpful with a radio station if you're a female and they think you're good, then that would be helpful that you're a female because there's so few of us in this industry. But I would be annoyed if I thought that I was a divert just because I was a woman. So I am split on this, but I'd like to know what you think about it. Is it just, no, it should be the right person for the job? But what if you have a man and a woman who are equally brilliant, right? Do you then choose the woman because she might bring something different? Or do you always go for the man? So let me know what you think about this. 0344 499 1000. Calls charged at the national rate, but we do call you back, and text the word talk and your message to 87222. Well, joining me to discuss this and to go through the front pages of the newspapers is Andrew Hosken, author and journalist and former BBC senior correspondent. Hello.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Now, what do you make of this? I mean, Andy Burnham's had to go and see the Women's Parliamentary Labour Party. There's been lots of complaints about the way Labour has treated women with misogyny and briefings against women and all of this sort of nasty stuff going on. Keir Starmer was very much a boy's boy and kept women out of the room when decisions were being made. So do you think that Labour has a woman problem in the way that other parties perhaps don't?
Well, as you say, they haven't had a woman leader as yet, whereas the Tories have, up to now, including Kenny Badenoch, have had 4. Yeah. As you say, some better than others.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
We don't mention Liz Truss.
I suppose you can count Liz Truss as a leader, although she was only leader for about 50 days.
Yeah,
so
just under.
Blinken miss her Prime Minister, and we certainly don't miss her. I mean, in Labour's defence, you have to say this is the party that brought in all-women shortlists for parliamentary
Yeah, and there was Blair's
candidates.
Babes.
That came in as a result of that. As you remember, in 1997, when Tony Blair won the election, there was that famous photograph.
It was very unedifying.
Well, it was making a point. I mean, it seems a bit corny now, but at the time, it was just making the point, wasn't it? Well, look, we're getting women into Parliament, and when you consider that women didn't even get the vote, the suffrage, until, you know, well into the 20th century. You know, that they've done pretty well so far. You know, to become Prime Minister, you know, 3 times for the Tory Party, and we've had a deputy Prime Minister through Angela Rayner, who was forced to resign in September. So Keir Starmer did have a number 2 woman, and I find it hard to think that Starmer might have a bunch of guys around him, but I don't think the charge that he's a misogynist can be really laid at his door.
Well, he didn't know what a woman was. He wouldn't commit. But he wouldn't commit to saying what he thought. And that again, that kind of indecision from a Prime Minister be there if he had consulted with women before he went into an interview? That is the question I asked myself at the time.
Well, I think if he consulted just common sense, he would have said, well, you know, I mean, there's these questions about, you know, we all know what a woman is, and does a woman have a penis? And there's the sorts of questions, isn't it, that politicians get asked. I think, yes, you know, obviously they don't.
Well, trans women do, but they're trans women.
Well, yes, they're trans women, but so it's yes, we know these are trick questions, but of course he does know what a woman is, and but yeah, I mean, also you have the other issue, don't you, where you have 400 members of Parliament, Labour members of Parliament, only so many jobs going round. I mean, this is the other problem. This is the problem that all parties have with big parliamentary majorities, is that people are always whinging and whining that they want to be a minister or a PPS as well.
Yeah, but you've got a situation. One of the complaints that the Women's Parliamentary Labour Party said is you can't have more Miliband's in the cabinet than women, because it looks like David Miliband maybe coming back into the fray. He'd have to get a position in the Lords in order to do that, but that's on the table. And then you've got Ed Miliband as well. So, yes. You know, and you are, you know, getting, it looks like Yvette Cooper and Rachel from Accounts maybe...
See, Rachel from Accounts, you see, that's a sort of a bit misogynistic, isn't it? I mean, it's funny as well, but it's
also
sort of stuck on her as
it was stuck on her as probably as a misogynistic comment, but I think she deserves it, given that she fibbed a bit on her CV and has not done us any favours as Chancellor.
OK, well, I mean, yes, you can make criticisms of her. I think, you know, she's the first woman Chancellor appointed by Sir Keir Starmer. We got Yvette Cooper as the Foreign Secretary.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they're likely to go.
The Deputy Prime Minister.
Those two.
Well, they haven't gone yet, and there is no... and, of course, Andy Burnham is likely to appoint more women into his cabinet. He's not yet been made Prime Minister, so we're sort of in this weird interregnum between Keir Starmer still being there and Andy Burnham, the sort of anointed king of the water, you know, about to sort of walk in and take his place on the throne. So, but it is almost certain that there'll be a massive cabinet reshuffle.
Yeah.
I mean, if you heard his speech that he made this week,
I did,
setting out this extraordinary new vision, a new Labour vision for the UK, it seems like it's going to be a radical shake-up in the way, what he's proposing, to be a radical shake-up in the way the country is run, from where it's run, and all the rest of it, and all these extraordinary, you know, renationalisation, council house building, all the rest of it. So there is likely to be a massive cabinet reshuffle. So some women will leave the cabinet, or maybe not. They may be put into other roles. Others may come in. But I think that the Labour women members of Parliament are making this call now. I think Keir Starmer's gone, virtually.
Yeah, there's no
This
point.
is to Andy Burnham, and I'm sure he will have heard, he will hear that call, and of course he's got to shore up his own support within the Parliamentary Labour Party when he becomes Prime Minister. So I suspect more women will be coming in. So I think it's something that they're aware of and that they will address. And as I say, at the moment, yes, there is an imbalance, but at the other...
But it's not just an imbalance, is it? I mean, there's the whole thing about, you know, Peter Mandelson, for example, there's some comments saying that that appointment would never have happened if a woman had been in the room, would have been able to say, look, no, this is a terrible idea.
It was a terrible idea anyway.
It was a terrible idea, but they got kind of carried away with the possibly the blokeism of it all, and they like, he's a good guy, he can talk, he's a Trump whisperer, you know, and perhaps didn't step back in a way. But
maybe
it's possible that could have been avoided. But also the idea that decisions are being made about the country where women are the majority without a woman in the room even is an extraordinary thing for me. And the fact that Andy Burnham has said that he's going to promise that there will always be at least a woman in the room, it to me is like... Well, that's a heck of an admission, isn't it? That there wasn't before.
If that's the case, it does seem a bit eccentric. If you're deliberately holding ministerial meetings without any women in the room, I do struggle to believe that is the case.
No, well, I mean that's what Andy Burnham has promised that won't happen again.
Well,
so it must have happened.
Yes, it may have happened, and that may be a perception. But I do find it difficult. I mean, I haven't got I'm not a lobby correspondent. I don't pretend to have great contacts with the cabinet, but I find it difficult to believe there is a sort of Keir Starmer is so misogynistic that whenever he holds a meeting...
It may not even come from misogyny. It may just come from a lack of thinking about it. But that's an unconscious bias in a sense, you know, and an unconscious bias is still a bias.
He's had very senior civil servants, women advisors, Keir Starmer, who was pushed out through Morgan McSweeney and all that.
Yeah, the boys' club
back in the yes. So I mean, most prime ministers do have a cabal, and it's considered to be unhealthy, and a lot of them are blokes. Absolutely right, and it's for Andy Burnham to bring up his own cabal. He will have his own cabal. How many women will be in that cabal remains to be seen.
Well, hopefully more than
But yeah, I mean, if there's sort of a genuine sort of imbalance there, it needs to be redressed and addressed. But as I say, Keir Starmer's never struck me as being a misogynist or having a problem with women in power or having women around him. When he's had a foreign secretary, I mean, the three most powerful jobs, you know, the most sought-after jobs in the cabinet are Foreign Secretary, Chancellor of the Exchequer and Home Secretary. Well, two of them are women. And his deputy was a woman, and who's seeking to come back, as the papers say elsewhere. So, well, yes, if the cabals are cabals.
Were they window dressing? Or,
I don't think so.
I think, were they taken seriously?
Well, I think that there's such important jobs. You know, you can. You know, if you're the cabinet minister for paper clips and whatever, then that's maybe window dressing. But if you're the Home Secretary, the Foreign Secretary, and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, you want some serious, you know, political talent there. Yeah. Absolutely right, because that's what you build your government around. And if you don't,
and yet we're not hearing any names of women being mentioned in. And I mean, he said, look, this is all speculation, but all of the names we're hearing really are men in the top positions.
Absolutely. I mean, why do you need to? If one of the part of the speculation is to sort of bring back David Miliband potentially
as Foreign Secretary,
his big, very well-paid charity job.
Yeah.
In his Foreign Secretary role he's held before. If that is true, I mean, well, then what about a woman MP doing that job? Why do you have to bus in some ex...
But they bust in Andy Burnham, and he wasn't even an MP, in order to you know, and there were women that were talking about putting their names forward, Angela Rayner, Bridget Phillipson. There were women. Yeah. And then it was suddenly, no, we need Andy Burnham.
Yeah, for me, the Andy Burnham takeover of the Labour Party is one of the weirdest political events in my lifetime.
Yeah, I agree.
There wasn't... It seemed to be a sort of accumulation of small things that brought down Keir Starmer, rather than one big thing that brought down Boris Johnson, Margaret Thatcher, what we're used to seeing when prime ministers fall, some big scandal or some big political misjudgment, whereas, you know, Brexit or council tax and over with Mrs Thatcher. So it's very bizarre that he sort of wafted in through this by-election to become a member of Parliament, and people are talking about him as the next prime minister, or then the current prime minister then resigns, and so it's all very weird and strange.
It is very strange.
So but it is going to happen. And it's a gentle sort of coup, if you like, in a way, compared to some of the more brutal, ruthless operations we've seen from the Conservative Party over the years. But he will no doubt make it clear who he wants in his cabinet through leaks in the Sunday papers, running up to his, you know, official takeover. What will be in potentially 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
3 weeks. It's not very long.
It's not long at all.
So we'll soon find out who his new cabinet will be. Going into the summer.
Over the summer, he may not announce straight away a full cabinet. He'll have some jobs filled.
I'd be surprised. Yeah, it's going to be. I think that because obviously the parliamentary recess, the summer parliamentary recess, begins very quickly. I mean, very shortly now. It's only I think it's July the 19th is the date, and that's roughly the date that Burnham will become Prime Minister, according to the timetable. Yeah. So it'd be very unusual for somebody to come in as Prime Minister and not say who their cabinet are. I mean, that would be strange as well. So I think we'd want to know who is running the government.
Well, I mean, and I think that'll tell us more about Andy Burnham than we know at the moment. About what he's...
Absolutely. But I think you need to have a government even when everyone's on holiday. Yeah. So I think we'll know who was in the cabinet by then.
I do hope so.
And we'll know how many women are in it.
It'd be interesting. I mean, maybe there will be, but you know, we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about at midnight. Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. Should the Cabinet be a 50-50 split when it comes to governing the country? Back in a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you, and with me is Andrew Hosken, author and journalist and former BBC senior correspondent. The Times, Andrew, Farage and partner have built a £4 million property portfolio since Brexit. Do you care about that? I mean, I don't. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I care about £5 million and where that came from. But if he's earning £22,500 an hour talking about gold bullion, that doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah,
should I be more bothered by it?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you have across the Atlantic, you have Donald Trump, who's being seen to profit enormously from
2.2 billion, I think, in a year.
Yeah. And the former president, Joe Biden, accused him of being corrupt and of outright corruption, blatant corruption. Now, no one's suggesting that of Nigel Farage. But the idea of politicians earning huge amounts of money or gaining properties through being a politician, it doesn't sit very well with the public. And I think that Nigel Farage has got real problems with this investigation by the Parliamentary Commissioner into this £5 million gift that he received from this crypto billionaire based in Thailand called Christopher Harborn, who's also given 20 million quid.
They've just given them more, I think.
In reform.
Yeah.
Whether people think that's right for a foreign-based billionaire, crypto
He's just
billionaire.
Registered to vote, hasn't he, in the UK,
well,
I think, to get around the foreign billionaire thing.
It seems extraordinary that some incredibly rich person can just fund any political party.
I agree. I don't think it should be allowed here or in the US.
It's you know, what is the point of the Electoral Commission, one thinks. So, and of course, the problem with Nigel Farage with the £5 million gift that he's had, he's come up with too many different stories. Yeah. He hasn't been able to stick to one particular story. You know, one was that it was to pay for his security. Another one was that it was to,
thank you for Brexit.
Thank you for Brexit, delivering Brexit from a guy who is thousands of miles away from the European Union and Britain, and also that there was money that he could do with what he liked. He could buy Ferraris with it. And all the rest of it.
Yeah, he has said all of that.
And he looks very, very fit whenever he's asked about it. He looks like a sort of rabbit in the headlights.
Yeah, I'm surprised because he's normally quite smooth, actually, on when he's questioned. He's got his answers. He knows what he wants to say. But on this one, like you said, it's just all over the place. I mean, look, there's loads of parliamentarians who make money from the position they're in, and certainly when they leave that position, they get paid a fortune to be on boards or run the Spectator or do whatever they're doing. I don't have a problem with him earning it. I have a problem with him being given it and it not being transparent.
Well, the question with this story in the Times is that, you know, Nigel Farage and his partner have built a mortgage-free property portfolio of at least 5 homes of more than £4 million. I mean, hopefully he can explain how he's got this money, because he's had to have, of course, declared those properties outright, his ownership, to the Parliamentary Commissioner, and he's saying he has in this way. But there's another story in The Guardian that's saying he's also received £270,000 from gold bullion marketing.
Yeah.
So he's getting all this cash in.
But like I said, I mean, he also works on a TV station.
Yeah, GB News.
Yeah.
He's a presenter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean, and so look, the only people I think who should have a say, be concerned about his extra earnings outside of his job, are the people of Clacton. Right, where he's supposed to be their MP. And you know, he's now apparently afraid that he will be, if he's suspended for more than 10 days, then he has to go for a by-election.
There could be a recall.
There could be a recall.
And there'll be a by-election, which he could probably win, actually. But,
well,
who knows?
But has he been a good enough constituency MP?
Well,
that's the question.
It's you know...
But him earning that money from a gold bullion company, I don't care.
OK, well, that's absolutely fine, and lots of people won't care.
Yeah. The 5 million, I do care.
OK, well, that's... OK, the £5 million, people should care.
Yeah.
Because the rules seem pretty obvious.
They are.
That if you have to declare everything if you're even 12 months with becoming a member of Parliament.
Your significant other does.
The rules are clear.
Yeah.
So if he has breached those rules, then he's in lots of trouble. Because, as you say, if there's more than a 10-day suspension from Parliament, there then is a recall. Which means there would be a by-election, which would be humiliating as well.
And if he lost it, he couldn't then be Prime Minister.
He couldn't be unless he got shooed into another
one.
But, you know, they lost the Makerfield by-election, so it's not as if their fortunes are, you know,
well, they've lost 5 out of the last 6.
Yeah, exactly, yes. They had a good point. And so you know, there's no guarantee that he would win a recall. And also in the circumstances, you know, being forced to have that because the Parliamentary Commissioners found that he should have declared £5 million. So putting £5 million aside, there's this issue of these properties. Well, if he's declared them all well and good, it's just you know, it's just a sort of man of the people image that he likes to portray, and whether that sits very well with him coining it and buying all these houses and having a great time and profiting, you know, from being Nigel Farage.
I don't think people... I honestly think that a lot of people will just be like, well, they're all at it. I mean, that's the problem, is that we become inert to it, don't we? It's like, it's just, they're all at it. They've all got their noses in the trough.
Ted Heath, you know, famously didn't seem to be, you know, in receipt of huge amounts of private income outside being Prime Minister, and yet had a wonderful yacht called Morning Cloud,
that's right.
which people wondered how he paid for it. So people do sort of end up, politicians sort of end up being quite well off and owning lots of properties and doing quite well because they earn money.
No matter which side of the fence
exactly,
they're on. I mean, look at the number of millionaires in the Labour.
It's just with Farage, you know, it is obviously nobody's business what he earns outside and all the rest of it. But when you put it alongside the £5 million and the other stuff, and also the you know, he's different from other politicians, you know, and all the rest of it.
They all say that.
But he's just the same, really, which you know, and so it's just it'll be personal taste how people read this story. Some people have no problem with it. A lot of people will have. Other people will think, oh, it's just he's just like all the others, you know, making money out of being a politician.
The term I hear quite a lot is, oh, this is a witch hunt, because people don't like
well, that's
Farage.
A pathetic
I think it's a weak argument,
excuse,
absolutely, because if it was anybody getting £5 million and not declaring it...
I mean, Donald Trump is always a victim of a witch hunt. All these people,
he always is.
Everyone is always a victim of a witch hunt. And it's a bit of a a cheap jibe, really, isn't it?
I think so.
But yeah, I mean, if he's declared his properties, you know, he's declared this £270,000 he's got from his gold bullion marketing company, all the rest of it, all well and good. But as I say, he could have real problems with this £5 million.
Yeah, because we want to know what he got it for. That's the truth.
Well, why he didn't declare it, and also because it was a secret. It wasn't supposed to come out. It was the Guardian who found out about it.
Yeah.
So if the Guardian had found about it, we'd all be in complete ignorance about it.
Yeah.
About it all. And also, you know, because if he is going to seek to give crypto billionaires favours, if he ever becomes, you know, promising them favours.
But he already did, didn't he? Didn't he go to the Bank of England and start to talk to them about
there's all kinds of allegations,
regulations and things like that. So there's all sorts of which obviously he denies that had anything to do with it. But this is what we need. This is what we need to know, because the one thing that you know, whoever is in charge of the country, we cannot have them in the pocket of industry or private investors or you know.
Crypto is highly, you know, it's quite problematic in many ways. For example, it's used extensively by drug barons and all the rest of it to launder money. It's you know, it's not as clean as it appears to be in some ways. So I'm not saying that the people, you know, I'm not saying anything about Christopher Harbour or anything else. I'm just saying the use of it to which crypto is put. So it's not entirely uncontroversial. And of course, it's something that Donald Trump is also making huge amounts of money out of.
Although his has dropped to such a low value now. According
to the papers, he's made $1 billion out of crypto alone. Leaving
and
aside
the rest of it in the Bibles and
free jets from Qatar and all the rest of it, which he's flown in recently.
First time. Yeah. It is. I think we all just get so, you know, beaten down by the inevitability of politicians getting rich off our dollar. You know, off our backs.
It's the way it looks. It's not. I'm not saying anything criminal's happened. I'm just saying.
No, it's just that it is the way it looks.
It's the way it looks.
But I think that those people who love Farage just see this as just attacking him because it's Farage, and that will always be the case.
It's Farage derangement syndrome, or it's Trump derangement syndrome, isn't it? Whenever you have a go at them, you're
just jealous.
It's rather predictable.
Yeah, it is. The other story on the front here on the Times is Burnham's first job will be to find £7 billion worth of cuts. Apparently, the Burnham camp is livid at Keir Starmer handing him a £4.7 billion shortfall in the defence budget.
Well, he could always decide not to become Prime Minister.
I know, but he's furious, apparently.
I mean, finding cuts is what council leaders and Prime Ministers do day in, day out. I mean, it's part of their job.
Yeah.
But, I mean, a lot of the papers all seem to have this same story, which I suspect is because it's come from the same source, i.e. people close to Andy Burnham.
Yes.
So there's this. The Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced a budget for defence of around 298 billion pounds over the next 4 years, and people are saying, there are a number of people saying, well, it's not enough, or it's not funded properly. And the complaint here is, yes, he's making this commitment to spend £300 billion on defence, but he hasn't funded it completely properly because there is a hole in the accounts of, well, anything between 5 billion and the Telegraph's claim 15 billion. So it depends. And of course it will mean other things being cut.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are all people complaining about their bypass being cut, or their energy...
hospital building and stuff like that.
All the rest of it has to suffer. The problem is, you know, we face an increasingly difficult and dangerous world, and countries are being urged to spend more on defence. So NATO is hoping that countries will spend 3.5% of their total budget on defence, and this takes us up to 2.7% of our budget.
Yes, we're not.
And there was a row in the Commons between Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer today, Prime Minister's questions. And of course, Keir Starmer said, well, you guys and the Tories cut it to 2.3% GDP. So who are you to lecture us about, you know, defence spending when we're increasing defence spending? But there are all kinds of challenges, aren't there? Because, you know, we've got this increasing threat of Russia repeatedly threatened to attack countries in NATO, have invaded Ukraine, although it's going very badly wrong. Also, the technology is changing, so, you know, do we need to be spending so much money on frigates and stuff like that, which cost billions of pounds, when we can knock out some drones that might do a good enough job, which are much cheaper.
Yeah.
And so...
But that technology is changing all the time, as Ukraine have proved.
Absolutely.
That it is so difficult for them to keep up with it.
And of course, the big ticket items are our nuclear subs and our nuclear deterrent, which are huge. Of course, you know, it's interesting. I think there's been surveys recently about people saying, well, why don't we just sort of with other European countries, pool our resources to have a sort of European army, which of course is one of the sort of phony baloney excuses that were used during the Brexit debate. There's going to be a European army.
There's going to be a European army, and we don't want that. That's what everyone was saying.
Yeah, but people are now saying, well, why don't they... So that may be the way ahead. And of course, we did have a...
Well, we have sort of got European
with NATO,
cooperation,
yeah.
Not just with NATO, but with other things as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So there are is joint enterprise.
Yeah. Of course, during World War II, we teamed up with everybody against the Nazis and the fascists and the militarists in Japan. So, but it is a big question because it's becoming an increasingly dangerous world. So these are very important debates to have.
But will Andy Burnham even stick to it? Apparently, he said he will. But we'll wait.
Yeah, I mean, OK. So he's got all these other big things. He wants to reorganise Britain. He wants to get Council House building, all the rest of it.
Well, I hope he can do that.
Renationalising water companies. So where's he going to find the money for that too? Are also big questions to ask. Possibly. Well, he's got to be careful on that front as well. And also going back to defence, of course, you know, countries like Poland are already spending much more on defence.
Much more, and Germany.
Yes, I mean, Poland, I think, are spending almost up to 5%.
They are,
on defence.
But I mean, you know, places like Finland as well are spending more, but they are sort of closer to the problem.
Of course,
they're
both
more keenly aware than
Finland's
we are.
on the Russian border, and you know, and Poland's on the Ukrainian border.
Exactly. Listen, let's take a break, and Andrew and I'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie, and with me is Andrew Hosken, author and journalist and former BBC senior correspondent. At the iPaper, Rayner fights for cabinet return with housing job pitch to Burnham. She was housing before, wasn't she?
She was. She was the Housing, Communities and Local Government.
Yeah.
Of course,
so she wants to return
minister.
to her old job as housing secretary.
Yeah. She had 3 jobs, didn't she? She was
she did. Deputy.
She was the Housing, Communities and Local Government secretary. She was the deputy leader of the Labour Party, and she was also the deputy prime minister. And she had to resign all of them in September last year because of this kerfuffle over
her stamp duty.
Allegedly underpaying stamp duty. Although in May she was cleared of deliberate, wrongdoing. Although she was found to have broken the ministerial code, which is a serious thing because she messed up her stamp duty. But she was cleared by an inquiry later.
She was. But
to be fair, to report it fairly, of deliberate wrongdoing. But the thing is about Angela Rayner, she once bought me a pint. In Birmingham, yes. And she won't remember it, she won't remember me. I think I was there covering the mayoral, just before COVID, covering the mayoral, and she was what do you want? So I'll go on the pint market, please. So we went to the pub afterwards because it was pouring the rain. So she's a,
So you've been bought.
I've been bought, I've been bribed.
Farage, anybody else, Donald Trump, it's millions or an aircraft, and it's just a pint.
But the thing is about Angela Rayner, she is, she was considered to be a very big asset by Labour because she was genuinely working class. I mean, she came from.
I find all that really patronising. You look at me. I've come up through the rough.
No, I take your point, and you can make that argument. But when you look at the Labour cabinet generally, I mean, they do come across as quite middle class and all the rest of it. And she is sort of genuine. There's very few. I remember the big selling point of John Prescott, when Tony Blair was the same. You had these sort of very Oxbridge
except he had two Jaguars, one for his wife's hairstyle.
Yeah, there's all kinds of argument, and some of that was classist, sort of having a go at him. And
he was two Jags.
But despite that, yes, he had a ministerial Jag and he had his own personal Jag, didn't he?
Yeah.
So,
and his wife got a Jag, so her hair didn't get messed up.
So yes, I mean all those allegations. But he was also a big asset at the time because he brought together the sort of traditional Labour Party with this sort of new Labour. And I think without John Prescott, Tony Blair would have struggled to sort of form the new Labour coalition that he made so successful.
Yeah, maybe Andy Burnham would do the same.
Angela Rayner does have that working class, traditional Labour Party appeal, and she is an attractive political figure in that sense. She's very articulate, all the rest of it. She's charismatic. Whatever, people may disagree.
Well, she's a doer as well. I mean, no matter what you say about it, she managed to get through the Workers' Rights and the Renters' Rights Act and a couple of other bits and pieces. So, she...
And bungling your stamp duty is not exactly the crime of the century. She's had to resign.
I wouldn't have been able to bungle mine when I...
Well...
I had solicitors all over me going, right, this is what you owe.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but OK, she's resigned, all the rest of it. She's been cleared of deliberate wrongdoing, so I can see that she would want to come back. And of course, she was being touted, wasn't she, as a potential
she was,
leadership candidate.
But
she didn't run in the end, I suspect, because she realised she would lose.
Yeah, and Andy Burnham is
as indeed did Wes Streeting.
Yeah.
So I will, I won't stand because you would lose would be the answer to that.
Yeah.
Because Andy Burnham is pretty much the shoo-in. But having said that, so she wants to come back to the cabinet, and
they're big buddies apparently.
Yeah, she's a North West,
MP.
She's from Ashton. She's the Member of Parliament for Ashton-under-Lyne.
Yeah.
So she's from that neck of the woods, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because the power that is now going to the northwest. So that'll be the new sort of centre of power, and all this talk about number 10 North, number 10 Manchester. So, well,
I can't see how.
I think people will be surprised. I think the radical change is coming in the way the country is run, and probably the country we have become very much more London-centric. I mean, in Germany, you have a capital city, but you have the regions, these Länder, which are very powerful in their own rights, and it was deliberately done after the war.
It was done after the war. So they've been able to get that bedded in over the last 80 years, and it does work really well. The different. Yeah,
but they do seem intent on shaking things up, and she may very well be a part of that. So.
The Independent, though, has gone with a different one. It said Burnham's allies issue their first threat, hands off welfare. That is their sacred cow. They're not going to cut that. In fact, when Burnham was talking about reducing the welfare bill, he wasn't talking about cutting the welfare bill. He was talking about getting people into work, which would naturally reduce the welfare bill. But it's going to be a big one, because that is the biggest pot that they could potentially take money out of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the welfare, if you look at the pie chart of all government spending,
huge.
The biggest pie chunks are definitely welfare.
Yeah.
And yes, absolutely. Burnham's allies issue the first threat to Burnham, am I saying? Because there's no point threatening Keir Starmer, because he's going to be gone in a fortnight. Yeah. So he's already being threatened by his allies. with allies like that, who needs enemies? But there will be challenges, and of course it was interesting again in the Commons today with this rumpus between Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch, and Keir Starmer was saying to Kemi Badenoch, well, we don't need lectures from you, because first of all you cut defence spending, and secondly you put up welfare spending by £80 billion, just like them they put up immigration as well, and all the other things they promised to cut. So, but nevertheless, there will be this sort of initial tussle, and there will be, pressures from the constituencies within Labour Party, Labour Party constituencies, held constituencies, their constituents who will be on benefits. Some of them, many of them, will not want to see cuts, and there's a threat. Then they might just sort of go and vote for reform, or they will vote for other parties other than them if they're cut.
But there is talk about cutting the triple lock on pensions, and that they'll lose those votes. So I mean, not everything's going to be popular, but
potentially it depends. A lot of it is speculation at the moment. I mean, this is the thing, and there's a bit of a fever.
Going by what he's said before, Andy Burnham has talked about the triple lock. So, if he sticks to what he's said before, then that is a potential outcome of his government.
Well, in his speech this week, he outlined cutting welfare spending, and I think that he was looking. No,
but he wasn't. He's not going to cut.
He's talking about overall. He claimed. What he says. He set out this new vision for Britain. He's in the UK. He was saying he wants to raise living standards, but he also wants to make sure that these reforms that he's making to all these institutions will inevitably go to, with more employment, will inevitably
reduce welfare
benefit. Yeah. For example, there was this report, wasn't there, by Anna Milburn last month about the incredible number of people who are not in, they call them NEETs. Yeah, not in employment, education and training. And there's 1 million. I mean, that is costing the country billions.
Yeah.
So, if you were able to get these people into employment educational training, and he's talking about also technical training and having less emphasis on education, being totally focused on universities. Yeah. If you could, that's how he's talking about reducing the welfare bill. But
will it be quick enough?
Yes, it's not going to be quick enough. And I think that, as we know, through the winter fuel allowance cuts that were made or were announced by Keir Starmer at the beginning of his parliament, beginning of his government.
That was the beginning of the.
That really sort of caused him huge amounts of problems. And then he had to do a U-turn on it, which caused him even more problems politically. So cutting welfare is always a very difficult and dangerous thing to do. So I think that Andy Burnham will be looking to do this gradually by the reforms that he hopes to make, and we'll see if that works or not.
Right, let's take a break, and Andrew and I'll be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you, and with me is Andy Hosken, who is an author and journalist and former BBC senior correspondent. The Daily Mail has gone big on fresh fury as prostate betrayal. This is a panel that's rejected a major screening programme, had no specialists in the cancer and no black voices. Yeah. But I thought black men were able to have checks earlier because they are more likely to get prostate cancer. It's more prevalent in black men than white men.
It is. And I would urge anyone watching this, for goodness sake, if you're over 50, just go to your GP. Go to your GP.
I always say it.
And get a PSA test. Yeah. It's literally, you know, they just. I get one every year because I've got prostate cancer in our family. Yeah. And you just take up harmless jab, blood test. That's it. And you get a result back, and you'll get an indication. I mean, it's not 100% reliable. I mean, you can have a low PSA test and have a problem, and a high one and not have one. Yeah. But it's better than nothing. And I think the government. I mean, so there is that available, and I would urge any man, particularly if you've got history of it in your family, do it. There is this row. There seems to be, you know, according to the Daily Mail, who are campaigning on this, and good for them. I think it's a really important thing to raise awareness about this. You know, that they don't have the right sort of experts. They don't have any black men in it, and I don't know how in this sort of this UK National Screening Committee, Screening Committee, and apparently this committee has rejected calls to widen the scheme in a decision some experts say amounted to clinical negligence, and there has been a row about this in the recent past about screening and how to widen it and all the rest of it. So it's an interesting story, but, you know, leaving it to one side, you know, get checked.
Yeah, just take it into your own hands. Don't wait for a screening leaflet to come through your door. Just go and see your GP.
Make an appointment with GP.
I do talk about it all the time. I forced several of my listeners and callers to go and get their prostate checked.
Particularly black guys and anyone who's had it in their family or they're getting up too many times to have a wee in the night time, or
check it out.
Just get it done.
But a lot of people, certainly the older generations, were concerned about the checks, thinking that it was more intimate than that. But it's just a blood test now. So
it's ridiculous. People get ridiculously embarrassed about it. I mean,
and they die of embarrassment.
Yeah, and it's nuts because it's just nothing to be embarrassed about.
Yeah. The Daily Telegraph, Defence Black Hole is covered. Some more grim news about Mandelson. But this story, Burnham, deport the grooming gang rapist. Now, this is this horrendous Shabir Ahmed, who's 73 years old, who was convicted of 30 child rape offences as part of the Rochdale grooming gang. He was a leader of one of the Rochdale rape gangs. Cannot be thrown out of Britain despite being stripped of his British citizenship. Now, my understanding is he's also got rid of his Pakistani citizenship, which would render him stateless. So we are not, under international law, allowed to deport. But Andy Burnham is saying, I'll ask Home and Foreign Secretaries to review all the possible options, and they should consider nothing is off the table. And he's being released today, I think, or tomorrow, on Thursday.
Yeah, also it reports that Andy Burnham, who is, you know, he tweeted, like everyone, I want this vile criminal out of the country. Victims must come first. I will ask the Home and Foreign Secretaries to review all possible options. They should consider nothing is off the table. This was part of this awful Rochdale grooming scandal, which there were more than 50 victims. And this character, Shabir Ahmed, who's now 73, was convicted of 30 child rape offences as part of this scandal. But he can't be thrown out of the UK despite being stripped of his British citizenship. And apparently the reason for this is because as a Pakistani who came here before 1971, when Pakistan was in the Commonwealth, Ahmed has lived in the UK long enough to qualify for the exemption. Jailed for 22 years in 2012. And of course, you know, they're now let off. You know, you get these sentences, and then after they serve half the sentences
Yeah,
generally, and then
it's a
then
joke.
they're out. So it leaves the government with a bit of a PR.
He's clearly a danger. He's clearly a danger to the community. I mean, this is you can't rape 30 children and then be seen to be safe in the community.
Yeah, but it's a thorny problem, isn't it, for Andy Burnham when he comes in, because
it'd be a test for him.
There's this whole thing about grooming gangs and all the rest of it that a lot of people are drawing attention to, and let's see, if he's going to review all possible options to kick him out, then the people will hold him to that, because I think it's one of these things that really the public get very, very angry and rightly so and upset about, and they won't want this guy who's sitting on benefits or a pension, serving out the rest of his life in this country, when he could be kicked out. I mean, do you remember this sort of completely different character, but Abu Hamza, the famous Hook of Hamza, who we had no right to kick out, but we did in the end.
Yeah.
To a particular to a country in the Middle East, and so.
Because they wanted him extradited to America, didn't they? But we couldn't do that because the death penalty was on the table and we weren't allowed to do that. So we actually extradited him to a third country that didn't have such a rule, who then extradited him to America. Yeah, that's just popped into my head.
That's right, yeah, it's very well remembered. So it is, he's a horrible piece of work, this Shabir Ahmed. We don't want him around in this country, and if there's any way that he can be deported somewhere else, well, all the better. It depends who else wants him. I shouldn't think anyone wants him. But as I say, it'll be an interesting challenge.
Yes, anyway, it will be. And it will be a test as well.
For the test, it will indeed, yeah.
The Daily Express going, I fear for my safety after gang boss is freed. This is a victim. Same story there. And I suppose we've got to mention the big story of the day, and that is the footy. So Harry Kane, England 2, DR Congo 1. Certainly the first half, it was DR Congo scored reasonably early, and they seemed to be holding off the English team. But then in the second half, Harry Kane. Everybody laughing because I know who that is. Was scored 2 very close together.
Yeah, he's amazing.
And I could see it when I was driving past the pubs. It was like, wow! It's like, oh, we scored. Yeah.
To beating the Congo. Yeah. Harry Kane hits 2. He's an amazing. I think he's scored more goals than any other England player, and he all seems to turn up trumps. But I mean,
and he's the oldest one in the squad, I think.
Yeah, 44. Yeah. And of course, we had the very sad, in my view, resignation as England captain of the cricket team of Ben Stokes, who had an incredible career, was just the most exciting player, and after 4 gruelling years as England cricket captain has stepped down. Of course, Harry Kane seems to have been around as well as long. And, what a captain's... well, we say captain's innings in cricket, but a captain's goals, 2 goals. But, my goodness me, why do we always have these dramas with England just about sort of scraping through?
Oh, it's just,
every single time. You think, oh, God, can't you just beat them 4-0 and stop giving us heart attacks?
I know. Because it was really painful. The couple of times that I sort of dipped into it when I saw that the DR Congo was one up very early. I just thought, I can't bear it. I just can't bear it. And
but
knowing as well that talkSPORT, you walk through talkSPORT to get here, knowing that they'd all be, all around the multiple television screens we've got.
But when you consider, DRC is like such a fell state. I mean, it really is. It's incredible.
But you've had shocks from, Germany, Paraguay. I mean, there's been all sorts of shocks in this tournament.
But they had incredible They've got this incredible goalkeeper, Lionel Mpassi, who's, I think that's how you pronounce it, who saved all these amazing. Yeah. So we could have been 10-0 up or 10-1 at the end of the day if they hadn't had such a brilliant goalkeeper.
A brilliant goalkeeper. Well, we've got Mexico next.
Yeah. Well, let's see how we get on.
Monday morning, 1 a.m.
And that's going to be in Mexico City, isn't it? The Aztec Stadium.
Yeah.
And that's on Monday, I think. So
Monday 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And so we will be waking up.
1 a.m. Great.
We will be waking up to potentially a loss, but there you go.
Let's be hopeful.
All right.
Hope springs eternal.
Andrew, thank you very much indeed. I'll see you for lunch tomorrow.
Yeah.
Andrew Hosken there, author and journalist and former BBC senior correspondent. And in case you're wondering, yes, he is my brother. Right now, we're heading off to the United States of America, and also your calls on should Cabinet be 50-50 men and women.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Petrie here with you, and this is your chance to talk back. Although we do have a couple of hits in this hour because of the football. But I want to talk to you about the idea that half of government should be female. This is Labour women telling Andy Burnham, who is set to be our new Prime Minister in just under 3 weeks. Andy Burnham is being urged by the female Labour MPs to commit to a 50-50 gender split within his government should he become Prime Minister in July. A draft letter from the Women's Parliamentary Labour Party, seen by journalists, said that Labour must lead by example with its own personnel if it wants to be seen as the party of equality. Now, Labour has never had a female leader, and it has had women in top jobs, but should it be that the decisions are made in Parliament, in government, that there should always be a 50-50 split in terms of gender? I mean, women make up more than 50% of the population in this country, but of course we don't make up 50% pretty much anywhere. But it would be interesting to see how that would work. I'm not in favour of for the sake of it, just putting somebody in for diversity. I'm really not in favour of that. I think where there are two candidates and one is a man and one is a woman, then you should perhaps vote for the diverse candidate. If if they're both equal and one is black and one is white, then you make your decisions depending on how you want to diversify your staff. But I think that different people bring different views and different opinions, and I think certainly there should not be any decisions made in this country without a woman being in the room. And that is something that Andy Burnham has agreed to because it hasn't always happened. Believe it or not, when big decisions are made, there is not a woman in the room to add her voice to it, even though we make up that larger than 50% of the population. So I just want to know what you think about this. I mean, look, I think there should always be a woman in the room, but I also don't agree with, just for the sake of it, putting a woman in a job. I'd like to believe that if they were good enough, then give them the job. That's great. Do diversity that way, but not just for the sake of it. I don't agree with that. So I'd like to know what you think, but I also do think that women need to be part of the story. They need to be part of the discussion, because we do think slightly differently, and we might bring something new and more interesting and nuanced to a conversation. So that's where I stand. Where do you stand on this? Do you think that Andy Burnham should be forced into a 50-50 gender split cabinet? 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. Well, listen, talking of women in high positions in a Labour cabinet, of course, Shabana Mahmood, as the Home Secretary, holds one of the highest titles. Now, she's been coming out with a lot of stuff in the last couple of weeks that she wants to do with our migration crisis. All of it seems to me to be tinkering around the edges, but she has, one of her policies is that if you come to this country illegally and you have a child, that child will not act as a reason for you not to be deported. Now, I do not see how that is going to work, and I just think it's probably more word salad than actual reality. But it reminded me very much of Donald Trump trying to get rid of birthright citizenship. It's a similar idea that somebody, it's called an anchor baby, that will anchor you to the United States. If you're a foreign national, you have a baby in the US, that baby is a US citizen and therefore has a right to remain in the US, and you therefore as the parent would stay to take care of that child. Donald Trump hates this. He says that it's the only country in the world that does it, which is absolutely and emphatically not true. There are at least a dozen other countries that have birthright citizenship. So to discuss this further, we've invited the fabulous John Mysick back, politics editor at masslive.com in Boston, because John, he tried, didn't he, to get this through. He signed an executive order on his first day to try and get rid of birthright citizenship. Trouble is, it's 14th Amendment in the Constitution, and the Supreme Court ruled against him.
Yes, Petrie, first off, let me thank you for the upgrade to fabulous.
Anytime.
It rather made my evening. But yeah, this was an extraordinary rebuke to Donald Trump from the U.S. Supreme Court. It's a 6-3 ruling, and the justices looked at the plain language of the 14th Amendment that says if you're the child of a foreign national and you were born in the United States, then you are a United States citizen. This is language that's been enshrined in the document since the post-Civil War era, granting citizenship to formerly enslaved peoples. This is something that's very deeply ingrained in U.S. culture. What was interesting about the ruling, Petrie, is that while they upheld, birthright citizenship 6-3, there's a 5-4 vote, more narrowly divided vote on the underlying constitutionality of Trump's executive order. And immigration advocates are seeing a really problematic message from the High Court on that count. They might give credence to sort of fringe theories about who does and does not qualify for citizenship. I mean, had this been struck down, there's something like 250,000 babies who are born in the United States every year to undocumented people who effectively would have been left stateless through no fault of their own. So in the near term, this is very definitely a win.
So he's, though, said, well, I don't need to change the Constitution, I can just change the law. It's very difficult to see how or where he can go with that if the Supreme Court has struck down his request to abolish birthright citizenship.
Also, good luck to him trying to get that done in the Congress, even with even with current Republican majorities in the U.S. House and Senate. It's hard to imagine a universe where that could pass and get to his desk, given the 60-vote threshold in the Senate. And again, the plain language of the 14th Amendment speaks for itself, and it wouldn't withstand a constitutional challenge.
It is interesting, though, isn't it? Because this was one of Donald Trump's big ones. This was a big thing that he wanted to get done. I mean, at the same time, things have gone his way. The transgender women in sports issue, that went his way. That looks like now it'll spread like wildfire across the entire other states in the US. So he has won some, but he's won the small ones and seemingly lost the big ones, because he also lost out on the tariffs that he was putting in. So there's some of these big things that he's tried to stick to and tried to carry out, they haven't gone his way.
That is true to a point, Petrie. I think I'd point out that the court engaged in an extraordinary expansion of executive power in a decision it handed down Monday in a case known as Slaughter, where the administration tried to fire a member of the Federal Trade Commission. These are quasi-independent government agencies whose members are appointed by through congressional vote, who are supposed to be insulated from the whims of politics, who are supposed to be insulated from outside influence from the executive branch. The court granted him the right to fire Ms. Slaughter from the FTC, and also extended to all of his successors to give them much more broad latitude to get rid of these independent regulators, many of whom are the final stop for consumers and Americans seeking redress from government. It's a theory. It's called the unitary executive theory, where some posit that the president has almost unlimited power to run the government, and that was certainly buttressed in this case. So while he was handed some defeats, with this one ruling, and there was a pretty dramatic expansion of executive power. That's not being talked about as much, but it's pretty big.
So where does Trump go now with this birthright citizenship? Is that's over for him? You think it's just gone? He's going to have to move on?
At the moment, nowhere. The court has spoken. It's still the law of the land. And there's there's no one to go to address beyond that. He tried to say he might address it statutorily, but it's very difficult to envision a scenario where that would come to pass.
Does this prove something about the Constitution? Because it does appear that Donald Trump has wanted to pick and choose what he felt the Constitution really meant, or what it really said. There's the idea that he would quite like to run again. I think that's gone quiet now. But how could he be president again when he's not allowed to? That was just running roughshod again over the Constitution. Does this give you some hope that the Constitution will stand up to scrutiny in this way?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually one of my very favorite topics to talk about. I get very nerdy about this with high school kids when I get asked to speak to classes. I mean, the framers were a kind of genius in the document that they envisioned 200 and some odd years ago. It's endured all sorts of changes. It's proven to be remarkably durable. Its language has withstood. There are some parts of it, obviously, that have not stood up, and it's had to be edited along the way. But sort of the underlying framework that they gave us in Philadelphia in 1787 has withstood. And then there's a very special kind of genius to that, I think.
Yeah, it is really, because I was really worried at one point. I thought, what's the point of the Constitution if you can just pick and choose and run roughshod over it? So this is quite an interesting moment. I want to talk to you as well about the latest from the US and Iran, because, again, we're sort of getting a lot of mixed messages here that Donald Trump said, well, I might have to go back to full military. I don't think anybody believes he's going to do that. But he's still talking about that he's going to finish the job. J.D. Vance seems to be ignorant of the fact that Tehran is now claiming sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, and they would do whatever they want with the Strait of Hormuz. Thank you very much. So, again, it seems to be wishful thinking on one side and cold, hard truths coming from the other side, and never the twain.
Right. I mean, there was the meeting in Doha today. No direct talks between U.S. and Iranian representatives. It's just a sort of pass-through talks. The fate of the Strait of Hormuz remains very much in play. They're still trying to hammer out the finer points of the memorandum of understanding that was signed a couple of weeks ago. Still trying to press Iran on its nuclear regime. There doesn't seem to be a lot of progress there. We have this very fragile ceasefire that, depending on people's moods, seems to exist or not.
Yeah.
And there's the whole matter of Hezbollah and Lebanon and what Israel is going to do over there, which that in turn could hang up peace talks as well. It's a very tenuous and fragile peace. And again, Iran won what are basically reparations from the United States. They won unfreezing of their assets, and by any sort of objective measure came out at the better end of this. You have J.D. Vance over there who and you and I talked about this the last time I was on your air, who has been, going to effectively be the bagman on this if it goes sideways.
Well, Trump said, didn't he? I mean, I saw him saying, well, if this goes wrong, I'm going to blame J.D., and if it goes right, I'll take the credit. I mean, he actually said those words out loud.
Exactly right. It's a very uncomfortable position for the vice president. I think if he had any ambitions for 2028, that they may be hanging in the balance as well.
Yeah, I think Rubio's probably going to get the endorsement from Trump. That would be about where I put my money if I was a betting woman. Talking of money,
indeed,
big story out today about how much money Donald Trump has made since he's been the president of the US. And what I thought was really interesting was that every year the president, whoever it is, has to declare what they've earned and what they've been doing. Obama had 9 pages of disclosure. Biden had 11 pages of disclosure, and Donald Trump had 927 pages showing the money that he's earned since being president. Is it problematic in the US, or do people go, yeah, good for him making all that money?
It's deeply problematic. The president has made billions of dollars from cryptocurrency, something that the government is actively involved in regulating. Still continues to earn money from his various and sundry real estate properties and golf clubs and what have you, from his media holdings as well. And they were flashing footage on the evening news here just before I jumped on air when Trump was elected the first time, and vowing to be completely separate from his business interests and handing over all of the reins to his sons, and he would have nothing to do with it, and he would not have nothing to do with business. And we know that he has dramatically enriched himself since coming back to
1.1 billion alone in crypto, and another billion, it seems, in other bits and pieces. Of course, he's just going to say, a lot of the other presidents as well, just to put this into context, will put their money and their trust into a kind of blind trust, don't they? That they can't affect at all. I think Jimmy Carter did that, didn't he, with his peanut farm. Peanut farms, that's right. So that he couldn't be accused of enriching himself. But Trump has made absolutely no apology for him continuing to make money selling Bibles and watches, phones, and all sorts of other things with the name Trump on them, which would seem like profiting from your position as president.
I dislike using the word, but it's an absolute grift. There's as you said, the Bibles and the watches and the passport embossed with his image, the memorial coin. It's all very, imperial Rome. And the United States has a long tradition of never having had a sitting president's face on the currency.
Yeah.
It's
a
living president, unlike your Queen Elizabeth, who was on your pound notes and your currency. That's to separate the man from the Constitution, the man from the government. He's only a temporary steward of the government. The government is not the person. Donald Trump very much sees himself as the embodiment of the government, and as you know, Petrie is working to sort of leave his imprint all over Washington, D.C. Before he goes out of town in 2028.
Yeah, well, we'll see how long they last after after he's gone. And just finally, I just wanted to update on this story, the Nancy Guthrie story. This was the daughter of quite a famous TV presenter, the mother, sorry, of quite a famous TV presenter in the US who went missing. And it was big news, and then it's just slipped off the agenda. But the FBI have now said that all of the ransom notes that they got were fake, and it seems that she may not have survived this happening to her.
I can't imagine anything more heartbreaking for Savannah Guthrie and her family. By all accounts, they're a very close, very faithful family. They checked in all the time, and then one day, Mom didn't show up for, I think it was like a virtual church service, and they called in and were very concerned about her. And you're right, Petrie. I mean, this was front and center in the headlines for weeks and weeks and weeks. It got bumped off by Iran and Epstein and other stuff. And I sort of lost track of it myself, quite honestly, until there was this new talk of the ransom notes. And, now that this, unfortunately, you don't want to confirm it, but it's quite likely that the elder Guthrie may well, not be with us anymore. And I remember losing sight of my kid once in a grocery store for 45 seconds and flying into blind panic. I mean, I can't even imagine what this family must be going through and what kind of special hell this must be for these many weeks.
And at least if she has gone, then please tell them where she is.
Exactly.
Have you been to the State Fair in Washington?
I have not. It's a little far afield from Boston.
Yeah, it's a bit far, isn't it? And petrol's not as cheap as it used to be. What do you make of Donald Trump saying that 500 million people have been there, considering there's only 350 million people in the US?
It'd be quite an influx of tourists, I suppose. We had heard back from colleagues whose family who had been down there and seen the Massachusetts fair house on the National Mall, and reported back that it was dramatically lacking. The government of Massachusetts opted not to participate in the state fair process, as did a lot of other state governments.
It's empty. Have you seen the footage?
I have, and that certainly appears to be the case. It was apparently quickly thrown together, not well planned or well executed. And part of the president's plan to sort of make the 4th of July holiday all about himself. Apparently the food and concessions are quite expensive, but I hear the Ferris wheel's a blast, so they got that going for them, I guess.
Yeah, my favourite was they were trying to say that there were thousands of people watching this concert, but the guitarist had on some mirror-reflecting glasses, and they zoomed in on the glasses and could see there were about 7 people standing there, and they were all lying and saying that thousands of people were there.
It is a bit Potemkin fair.
I mean, it doesn't look like it's the fun place to be that Donald Trump is saying it is. John, always a pleasure to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. John Misek there, politics editor at masslife.com in Boston. I'm going to take a quick break. Back in a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here, and this is Talk Back, and I want to hear from you about whether you think that Andy Burnham should commit to making half of his cabinet 50-50 gender split. So, 50% men, 50% women. I suppose if you start getting into splits like that, then you'd start talking about, you know, what kind of split should there be for people who are disabled, or what kind of split should there be of people who are of colour, what kind of split should there be of all sorts of different diversities. And I suppose it could get very, very complicated. But when you consider that the country is divided almost 50-50, although women make up more than 50% of the population in the UK, then should it be that the cabinet should at least be 50-50 men and women? I'm not fond of that idea for the sake of it. I think if you naturally put women into jobs that you think they'd be great at, I think that's brilliant, and that would be fantastic if it was 50-50, great. The thing is that I do think that women should be present in all decision making. It doesn't, you know, if there's a table meeting, a ministerial meeting, I think there should be a woman in the room. I definitely think that. But I wouldn't go as far as to say 50-50 was necessary. I don't know. What do you think? Should it be 50-50, or do you think that then it would be like, oh well, what else are we going to, you know, what else are we going to have to be diverse about? Are we going to have to, you know, tick every single box? And that certainly would concern me, because I don't want that. I want it to be a meritocracy. I mean, unfortunately, the world isn't a meritocracy, but it should be, and that's what we all hope to strive for, right? But do you think? What do you think? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000, or text the word talk and your message to 87222. Joining me to discuss this is Grace. Good morning, Grace. How are you this morning?
I'm very blessed, thank you. How are you?
Good, very well, thank you. Yeah, very well. So what do you think about this? Do you think that it's almost too patronising to engineer it in this way?
Yeah, I mean, it seems tokenistic and patronising in itself, but I also worry because I am seeing more and more misogyny online. It's not necessarily the same thing as how life is in the real world, but it's quite noticeable. You know, far more than I'd ever noticed online prior to several years ago. Suddenly there's a lot of it. And I think that were there to be things like this, you know, giving women positions in government on the basis of being women, it would actually worsen the problem, because some of these men who are misogynistic mistakenly have the idea that they're really oppressed. Feminism has made life really hard for them here in the West in the 21st century, and they're entitled to be angry about it or do something because they're so hard done by, supposedly. And I think that things like this policy idea would just kind of further that misapprehension in their minds. And
that women are taking over. I do think, though, that women should be in the room. I think there should always be a woman somewhere in the room if decisions are being made on I don't know, on education or health, on everything, on anything, because you know, I think that does, as a fresh point of view perhaps, or a different thought process. And the idea that these decisions were being made without women in the room, I think, is a bit odd.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously the case that for most of human history there's been a lack of inclusion of women in most decision-making and positions of power.
Not least, of course, in religion.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very complicated, that, because in the early church there were disproportionately many women, because actually women in that setting were given more recognition and appreciation than they often were in the kind of ancient setting otherwise. And the first people to see Jesus after he rose were women.
Yeah,
and
that's
they went
right.
And told the disciples, who had run off scared.
Mary Magdalene apparently went and told the disciples, didn't she?
Yeah. So it's interesting. And I mean, people like Tom Holland, the historian, have argued that we wouldn't have had the gender equality in our society develop were it not for Christianity, but that's his view as a historian. But you're right that there have also obviously been misogynists within church institutions and some other religious institutions. So it's very complicated. I'd argue that if people are going to be power hungry, then they might try and be power hungry in whichever institution they're happening to be in. So it's obviously the case that there are sexists within
all organisations. Yeah, absolutely. But it is. I think that this balancing thing. I think that it is starting to happen slightly organically. It's taking a very long time, particularly with the Labour Party, it seems, to have the same respect for women politicians as they do for each other as men. Seems to be taking too long.
I guess I'm kind of speaking as someone who's not in the particular setting where these female politicians are trying to their voices heard, and if they're saying it feels like a bit of a boys' club, then I can't know, to what extent that's true because I'm not in that setting. I guess it's frequently in my mind that there are situations of really serious oppression of women and girls that don't get enough attention. I mean, I keep banging on about how one of the things our government has done is to end its program for trying to tackle FGM in our world. Because when they cut overseas aid, actually overseas aid isn't all just wasted in the way that some people presume it is. One of the many programs that was axed because of those cuts. This program to tackle FGM, but other things as well. So when there are injustices in our world, quite often women and girls suffer more than
they do. Yeah,
others.
There's no doubt about that.
So I'm quite often thinking to myself, can we talk more about the little girls who had to go and collect water instead of going to school? Can we talk more about the little girls who are forced to get married?
I want to talk about the girls in Pakistan at the moment who are being forced to go back to Afghanistan. Which they are. I agree. There's a lot of gender issues in this world, but I just wonder if there were more representation of women in government, that maybe there wouldn't be quite so much. I don't know. It's hard to know. Grace, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Martin says having 50% women for the sake of diversity is beyond ridiculous. Look where so-called diversity has got us. It's an absolutely pointless exercise. Meritocracy is the only way. And meritocracy is the only way, but it is also the only fair way if everybody didn't have a bias. And unfortunately, we can't guarantee there isn't bias. Therefore, that's why meritocracy fails. Anyway, it's a nice idea, but I can't see it working. Anyway, quick break, back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning to you. This is Talk and it is Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. And joining me now to discuss the football is Alex Three Lions Irons.
It's been a long time since you've called me that. So,
it's been a long time since you've been in the studio. It's good to see you.
And you.
The England game today, 5 o'clock until I got in at 7, I think it was. It was one of those things where I couldn't get a car. Because everybody had taken the afternoon off to go and watch the football. But once I finally did get a car, we could track how the game was going by the noise that came out of pubs. And there were many of them as I drove from one side of town to here. And yeah, that was when we first knew that Kane had scored his first goal. Was a pub. And then not very long afterwards, we weren't very far down Earls Court Road when another pub exploded. And we went, oh, what? That's that must be another goal. So a bit nervy though, because the first half they scored quite early.
Yeah, in the first 7 minutes, Congo got their goal, and the feeling, and I've been here since about quarter to 4 this afternoon, and the feeling was this is going to be like Iceland 2016 when we lost to Iceland, and to go 1-0 down within 7 minutes, we've just gone, oh, here we go. This is when.
But the crowd at the stadium was quiet.
Yeah,
well. Everybody was quiet.
It felt like this is England doing what England does, and doesn't get through against a smaller nation. And it felt like that for a long time. The team looked very agitated and frustrated, especially before the first hydration break in the first half.
But Jude Bellingham was getting agitated in the last game as well. Because there was a hugely defensive game being played, wasn't there?
Yeah, but we played Panama in that game. Yeah. And that was more of an attacking game. I think it was more frustrating because England just weren't taking their chances in that game. And then the same with Ghana. Teams playing in a low block, they know that England struggled to get through that. And Congo they did what they needed to do. Got an early goal and then just sat back for as long as they could. And it worked until Harry Kane does what he does best and broke them down. And it was like, right, okay, we're at level.
So we go
Congo
to penalties at least.
Started to extra time at least. Congo started to come out and play a bit more because they're like, right, if we're going to win this now, we've got to come out and play. And then Kane, less than 10 minutes later, scored a screamer into the top right-hand corner, and it just felt like a huge sigh of relief to get through against a team that, another potential banana skin. That's 3 in a row now. So, onto Mexico on Monday morning, which. They've got a quick turnaround. It's in Mexico, so one of the host nations, of course, at the Azteca, one of the highest stadiums in the world.
So they're going to have to battle
with altitude sickness potentially as well. So Mexico on home soil is going to be tough. Very tough. That is going to be
tough. And a lot of people have been saying to me that England just isn't playing well enough at the moment. That it's really got to pull its boots up.
What's really annoying from an England fan perspective is that when England played like this under Gareth Southgate, people would be up in arms going, oh, we need to get a new manager. He's not being attacking enough. And now we're doing it the same. We're playing exactly the same way with a new manager and people aren't saying the same thing. And it's like, you can't say one thing for one person and say something completely different for someone.
Why is that, though? Do they like Tuchel? Is that?
I think it's like a new manager coming in, they're like, right, he might play things a bit differently, and then does exactly the same thing as Southgate did. And it's like, right, OK, maybe Southgate isn't the problem.
Yeah.
Maybe it's another thing with his players. Maybe it's something that the FA want. It's really hard to kind of like gauge where this team is at the moment. But with Tuchel in particular, he's a competition manager. He'll go on and play. He won the Champions League with Chelsea. He's won the Champions League with PSG before, so he knows how to win things and knows how to get through difficult games. And I've got a bit more belief in him than I did in Southgate, being like, right, OK, we know he can stick to a game plan and can pull something out the bag. And he's got the players to do that as well.
Well, there was controversy, wasn't there, though, about his pick for the team?
Yeah, no Palmer, no Foden, no Maguire.
There was because he wanted a nice team that got on. He wanted them to be considered equal or whatever. So there was some criticism of that.
Yeah, and I think that criticism is a correct criticism. I think the only way it can't be is if England at least don't get to the semi-finals. To not have players like Foden, like Palmer, who scored the equalising goal in the Euro final just 2 years ago, to not be in the team at all. If you'd said to me that then, oh, he won't be in the World Cup team, I think you're crazy. Maguire being a figurehead as well in the England setup, to not be in at all felt like a bit of a shock and a bit of a miss. Trent Alexander-Arnold not being in the team as well, a right back, which we are now short of. We had Declan Rice playing at right back earlier because Reece James has been injured, Jarrod Quansah's now injured as well, Jed Spence can't last 90 minutes. You've got to fill in elsewhere, and it feels like we're missing key players in key positions. Maguire, those three players wouldn't have been able to help, but Trent would have done. But for whatever reason, Thomas Tuchel doesn't want to play him, maybe doesn't suit his style, and has decided to leave him at home.
Well, it seems that all of the weight of winning is on Harry Kane now.
It feels like that.
It does
with his
feel
golden
like that.
boot. Now scored as many goals as Pele. Or has scored more. No,
And he's the oldest one in the squad, isn't he? He's 44. Isn't he old?
Kane's not 44.
How old is Kane?
He's like 33, 34.
Is he? I thought he was older than that.
No, it's not that old. I think it's at least 32.
Is that
I know he's
old,
younger
is
than
he?
me,
How
which
old
is
Harry
worrying, but considering what I could have done with my life.
Yeah, I thought he was older. But still, I mean, he seems to be the one that's pulling everything, really dragged us from the jaws of disaster.
Yeah, and I think
today.
he'll do it again. I think he'll do it later on in the
Well,
tournament.
they'll be all over him, won't they? They were the next team.
But then, you know, we've not really seen much of Ollie Watkins in this tournament. We've not seen any of Ivan Toney, who can score goals and has done consistently for his club out in Saudi Arabia. I know it's a different level, but still to be scoring goals on a consistent basis is a good thing for an England striker to be doing. But it's whether you want to take off Kane because you know he can do those magical moments like we saw earlier on against Congo. So I don't know. It's a tough one to juggle. And I'm glad I'm not the England manager because I know I'd throw it all away.
Yeah. Everybody's England manager at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, good point.
In every pub, in every part of the country, they're England manager. But this tournament, we were talking about this in the break, has been so full of surprises.
Yeah.
I mean, Germany going out to Paraguay, and the Netherlands going out. I mean, these are big teams. I mean, you know, Germany has won the World Cup, so you know, and they've gone out in the 32.
Germany's the biggest shock. The Netherlands have never won the World Cup, and Morocco got to the semi-finals of the World Cup 4 years ago in Qatar. So for Morocco to pull off a win against the Netherlands isn't as big as a shock as it looks on paper, because they've got the players to get deep into the competition, and it wouldn't surprise me if they did the same again. It wouldn't surprise me if you saw Morocco get as far as the semi-finals. That's where they're looking to push for again, to really kind of nail themselves as one of the top teams in the FIFA rankings and one of the top teams in Africa as well. In regards to Germany losing, that's huge. Paraguay, of course, lost to the USA, one of the hosts this time around, and people have gone, oh yeah, of course, USA being Paraguay. Paraguay aren't going to be very good this year. And for Paraguay to then qualify through the group, in a very tough group as well, and to then go up against Germany and take the lead as well. Germany, of course, would say they're unlucky, Tar getting a header, which had gone in to then put Germany ahead. That goal got disallowed for being offside. Or it wasn't offside, it was a foul in the build-up on the goalkeeper. A soft one, but a foul nonetheless. And to then take it to penalties, and a rollercoaster penalty shootout at that as well. Paraguay, I mean, I think they might hit a bit of a brick wall in the next round, but just to live in the dream if you're a Paraguay fan at the moment.
Just to beat Germany.
Yeah, just to beat Germany as well. And it was the first time that Germany had ever lost in a penalty shootout ever.
Wow.
At a World Cup. And it kind of felt like, to use a German word, a bit of schadenfreude.
Yeah.
Being an England fan, going, OK, now you know how it feels to be on the wrong end of a penalty shootout. All the times that you've beaten us to go through to a final or to a semi or to whatever, and for you to fall that hurdle, which the one that we fallen at so many times before, now you know what it feels like to be heartbroken after a penalty shootout. And it did feel nice.
Yeah,
and I felt happy for Paraguay.
That is schadenfreude, yeah. So our next game is Monday morning, 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And you'll be watching that, you said?
I'll be watching it. I've got to be up early for work, so I'm going to be very tired. A lot of coffee on the go, maybe a hospital drip.
Yeah.
And praying with my fingers and toes crossed that it doesn't go to extra time, because it means I'll be up, going to bed even later and getting up and getting less sleep.
Yeah, but if they win, you're not going to be able to sleep. And if they lose, you're not going to be able to sleep.
Yeah, so it's a lose-lose situation for me at the very least.
Yeah.
But I'm not the one trying to get into a quarter-final of a World Cup. So
yeah. What do you think our chances are?
Mexico are good. And their forward, Raul Jimenez, who used to play for the club that I support, Fulham, is having the tournament of his dreams. He's in the form of his life. He's scoring at least one goal a game. He's going to be their key man going forward, and it's going to be in front of their home crowd. Mexico fans will be up for it. England aren't going to get the same allocation as they have done at current games. They filled the stadium in Atlanta earlier. That's not going to happen at the Azteca.
No.
And it, with the altitude, with the heat as well, despite it being in the evening, it's going to be very hot still in Mexico City. England could struggle. Mexico will be. They'll have the 12th man in the fans behind them, and if you want to count the altitude and the heat, they'll have 14 men behind them.
Yeah.
So it'll be an uphill challenge for England.
Are we just setting out excuses for a loss?
Yeah. I was saying it'll be tough, but I think if England can come back from this game and beat Congo when it looked like they were all down and out, I can't see them not doing that against Mexico and pulling off something similar. I think if they want to show that they want to get to the final, this is the game to do it in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose, but there's been so many upsets so far and so many different outcomes.
And I'm hoping there's one more upset with Argentina being in the other side of the draw. They've got to play Cape Verde in the round of 32. Cape Verde haven't lost at the moment in the World Cup. They came through their group second in the same group as Spain. Playing against Argentina, they're the team that everybody seems to have fallen in love with. Their goalkeeper went from having 40,000 followers to 17.5 million after his heroic appearance in the one of the early games in the group stage. So, fingers crossed, Cape Verde can pull off a bit of a shock and beat current holders Argentina.
Just so we don't have to play them.
Just so we don't have to play them.
Yeah.
And then we can lose to Cape Verde in the semi-finals and they go on to win it.
Alex, thank you very much indeed. Alex Three Lions Irons, or as he's commonly known to me, my workplace teddy bear. TalkSport presenter. Hello. TalkSport presenter and producer. Thank you very much indeed. Right, quick break. Back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good morning to you. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. And we are talking on Talkback this morning about a request put in, a draft letter from the Women's Parliamentary Labour Party. It says that Labour must lead by example with its own personnel if it wants to be seen as a party of equality. And they have asked Andy Burnham to commit to a 50-50 gender split within his government when he becomes Prime Minister. So I've been asking you whether you think that it is the right thing to do. I mean, women do make up just over 50% of the population in this country, but I also don't really like hires for the sake of it, right? I don't particularly support that. I think there's a lot of people... I would love a world of a meritocracy. The trouble with a meritocracy is it relies on people not having a bias, conscious or unconscious, and too many people, too many of us have those biases. So a meritocracy, I'm afraid, is a wishful thinking. It is a lovely idea, but it will never come to pass because human beings are not that simple. But I'd be interested to know what you think. To tell me his view, Paul has called from Bolton. Good morning, Paul. What do you make of this?
Hiya, Petrie. Okay?
I'm good. How are you, my love? Are you all right?
Yeah, not so bad. I was a bit confused when you went to the football then, because normally you do a straight hour, don't you?
Yeah, normally I do, but it's a big tournament. Got to cover it. Got to cover it, especially when we win. We won't be doing it for long.
But, well, talking of women, they keep saying it's coming home this year, but it came home twice with the women, didn't it?
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah.
So if we're talking about meritocracy, the women are better at football in their own tournaments.
Yeah, well, they're better at winning tournaments, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't say I felt really strongly about this, but I think it would be nice to see not just a 50-50 split, but actually something like 70-80% of the cabinet and even the MPs being women, you know. I mean, like I said, I don't feel dead strongly about it, but I just think, I mean, as you said, the majority of people in the country are women. And another thing you've got to take into account is that women don't seem to have the same scandals in the public eye generally, do you know what I mean? You might get the odd smaller scandal with a woman, but it's very rare they have the bigger scandals. I mean, you only have to look at what's happened to the ex-DUP leader, you know, Jeffrey Donaldson.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's been some doozies, hasn't there?
You don't get women involved in them scandals. It might be the very odd one, mightn't it? But it's not.
Yeah, often not the sex scandals, not the, you know, the
serious ones.
Those are really serious ones. I agree with that, and I mean, there's a lot of questions being asked at the moment amongst younger women about the success or indeed failure of the patriarchy, because if you look around the world and you see what men have done to the world in terms of wars and anger and violence and all of those things, and they say women are too emotional, and you think, crikey, did you not know anger was an emotion? You know, I think that there will come a time when, and not in my lifetime, unfortunately, but I think there will have to be a matriarchy.
Well, I mean, Margaret Thatcher wasn't particularly anti-war, was she? So there is some women like that. But I know what you mean at the same time. And I just think, as you've said, we've had the men, so maybe it's just time to see what the women can do, and if they're just the same. And, I mean, the system's part of the problem, isn't it? Let's face it.
Yeah, it is.
It's fighting the system, whoever you are, do you know what I mean?
But if you look at the countries where they have largely women leaders or women in government, they were certainly the most successful during crisis like COVID. They were the most successful countries. The the ones that were run by women, and the least likely to get into wars.
And also the women. I mean, it might be because there's less of them, but I don't think it's completely that reason. But when you do get a woman leader, they tend to stand out a bit more, whether that's for good or bad reasons. But like Nicola Sturgeon, Angela Merkel, Jacinda Ardern, and now you've got the lady in Italy. I mean, all a wide range of
Meloni,
politics. Everyone knows who a lot of these women are. Do you know what I mean? And I think just women add a bit more colour to politics, do you know what I mean? It's just, someone was saying that about Farage today, obviously he's a personality, but I thought, well, whether you like him or not, Angela Rayner and Jess Phillips are personalities, do you know what I mean? You could hardly call either of them two dull when they speak. They feel like ordinary people, and you've got some on other benches, so I'm not necessarily picking out a particular side, but the young Green lady that won, you know, in February, I think part of her charm.
Gordon and Denton, she was a plumber, wasn't she?
Woman. Yeah, she's just relatable, and you get them. There's some on the Anna Soubry when she was in the Conservative Party stood out. Do you know what I mean? So. But I just think I think the meritocracy argument, I don't buy into it overly, because I just think you'd have to interview 60 million people to find the best person for the job. Do you know what I mean?
There's too much bias, unconscious or conscious bias, and people hire in their own image, and there's all sorts of things. We're not advanced enough emotionally and mentally as human beings to have a pure meritocracy, which I would like to see. We'll never see.
I agree with you to a point, and even though I'm not a big royalist, when they say about, well, obviously the royals are born into the job and it's a bit of an advantage, but then I think when I look at Parliament, I might have said this on your show before, but you've got 650 MPs, and you've got sisters, you've got sons and daughters over time, do you know what I mean? You've got, like, people, if they're not just MPs, they're in the journalism world, so there's a lot of nepotism, even when it's not blood nepotism.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And this is why there will never be a successful meritocracy. It just won't happen, because the world isn't fair, and you've got people with connections who can get you into your job, or things like that. And that's why a meritocracy is nothing but a dream, really. I would love it to be true, but.
Well, do you know Steve Richards? He's a commentator, political commentator. Well, his son's an MP, and then his son's wife used to work for Sky News, and then I think there's another sibling or a sibling's wife's an MP, and I just think that's out of 650 MPs. It's like such a small amount of people that can be an MP at any one time, and you've got all them connections.
Yeah, it's very true. But in my family, there's 5 kids, and 3 of us are journalists.
Well, yeah, and like I said,
none of that was nepotism. I didn't join the BBC until after my father died, because I wouldn't, in case I was accused of that. But my sister is a print journalist, so she's different. But yeah, I think there's also family traits that a lot of doctors have children that become doctors, right? And solicitors that become solicitors.
Well, my mum, my sister and my sister's daughter, they all work for the same company. It's only my sister's second job, but the other 2. And before that, my mum, my dad, my stepdad and my sister's main job was for another company. But then again, this is another argument I often bring up here. If you were to say about this woman thing or man thing or what have you, when it comes to what you call ordinary jobs, no one cares. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's sort of like, and like, all these people who say it's got to be the best person for the job, but when someone's on benefits, they don't care if that person's the best person for the job. They just want them off benefits. But so that's a bit contradictory, because you get a lot of the people who say best person for the job, but then when they're wanting to get people off benefits, they're not thinking, well, are they really the best person to be working at the minute? Do you know what I mean? So there is a lot.
That's very true. That is very true, and this is why it will always be unfair, as much as people try to make it or try to.
It's about little wins a lot of the time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wins. That's what politics is about. I mean, I'm more left wing than current.
What do you think of Burnham? Are you encouraged by Burnham?
Well, I had gone a bit more with the Greens and I wanted Hannah to win, but now when it came to the Makerfield, I went back to Labour, and obviously for the Labour mayor, because I vaguely know that woman as well. So obviously she's part of the LGBT community. So I mean, I wouldn't say I'd vote for everyone who's part of the LGBT community, but she's okay. So I think I've gone back to Labour, and I just think, probably like a lot of people, I'm giving him one last chance. Do you know what I mean? I like the fact that he's relatable, and I like the fact he's from the north, but I think that's why the media are a bit down on him, because they don't like the thought of a northerner. Do you know what I mean? I mean, how many prime ministers have we had that are proper northerners? Do you know what I mean?
Listen, yeah, and I love the fact that I can at least listen to Andy Burnham without wanting to throw